Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kenneth Chamberlain, Jr. I am one of the co-founders of the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, founded in early 2012 after the killing of my father, Kenneth Chamberlain, Sr. I sit on the board of the Civil Liberties Union, Lower Hudson Valley here in Westchester County. I am a member of Families United for Justice, which are families throughout the United States who all have loved ones that have been or victims of extrajudicial killings and summary executions at the hands of law enforcement. And although I've been on the, behind the scenes, helping out my community and giving back, it was the killing of my father that really thrust me to the forefront to really be the voice of the people. I'm just happy to be a part of this discussion. I mean, everybody on this panel right now, I know and respect. So I'm looking forward to a great conversation, a great dialogue.
Great. And last but not least, Brother Captain Dennis Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace.
Islam.
My name is Captain Dennis Muhammad. I'm not only a member of the Nation of Islam, but been a great helper of Minister Farrakhan for over 43 years. I'm the founder of the Peacekeepers Global Initiative. I'm also a founder of ENODA, which stands for Educating Neighborhood to Obey Those in Authority, and @ONE, which alternative training offered for neighborhood enforcement. These are both community and police sensitivity training, as over the 35 years, I have trained law enforcement in various cities on how to best relate to us and then teach us how to best relate to them. I'm very honored to be on this Zoom with these very powerful people who I see is half the solution to a lot of the problems that we're facing. I'm looking forward to the dialogue. And of course, we also been pushing the 10,000 fearless that the Honorable Minister Farrakhan asked us that we need to get that in every city to justice or else Day of Atonement. So we're looking forward to this, and I'm just get ready to get started.
Great. I want to start off because I know every one of y'all, and I worked hand in hand with y'all. And as I said in the beginning, we're going to discuss issues that are going to be truth-telling. And when it comes to the relationship between the Black community and law enforcement, it is a hard relationship historically. And as Black people and Black people that deal with the criminal justice system, just explain, each of you, the trials and tribulations in dealing and trying to bring these two communities together, because it is a constant struggle. I've been on the job for 30 years. Brother Ron, I met you, and you was on the job when I first started the job. And after 30 years of being on the job, you're still fighting. So I'm going to start with Ron, and then I'm going to go to Sonia and jump over to Jonathan, Kenny, and then we're going to end with Captain D. So go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, well, you know what, Damon, you're absolutely right. It has been it's been a struggle because of the history of law enforcement in our community. Has not been an easy one. The struggles that we've had have not only been the individual struggles, but they've been a collective struggle too, in terms of the history of law enforcement and the history of Black people in this country. The institution of policing is very racist, and we have worked in those institutions, and some of us still work in those institutions. And when you peel back the thin veneer of what it looks like on the top, those institutions are racist institutions, and they have carried out their agenda and their mission in a very methodical kind of way. But there's a positive side, and I want to lift up the positive side in the sense that there's brothers like Brother Muhammad, Dennis Muhammad, the work that he's been able to do with leaders of law enforcement agencies that have been aware and listening to the kind of things that's going on. If you would look at the history of the presence of African Americans in law enforcement, we have now probably less Black leaders and less Black individuals in law enforcement today than we had 20, 30 years ago. And I can tell you 20, 30 years ago, we had Black leaders in law enforcement that was very sensitive to the kind of things that were going on, because they came up in the time. I worked for a chief in 1978, was the first Black man to ever hold a job of chief of police in Washington, D.C. And when he got the job and came through the system, he had 30 years as a police officer. Of course, he had moved up through the ranks, but he had spent all his time in one of the 4 sections of the police department because he couldn't work in the other 3 sections because of the color of his skin. But that didn't stop him from being successful, because once he got to be there, he did some phenomenal things that changed the whole scenery of the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. And the community was very appreciative of that. And there was good relationships because they knew him and knew his work and the kind of work that he believed in. And that just didn't happen in Washington, D.C. It happened in other cities too, with other Black leadership, male and female. So there's the downside and the struggle, but then there are these times where the upside of it has happened. Who would have thought that a brother like Dennis Muhammad would have been working with a police department talking about training police officers in reference to how to deal with the Black community? And there was a time when that wouldn't have never been heard of, but he was able to do it because he brought the experience, the knowledge, and the expertise to the table in order to get that done, along with the pressure from the community. We can't leave out the pressure from the community, because even though police officers and the work that we've been doing over the years, I believe has a success to it, but the fact of the matter is that we've had community partners all along in the effort to sort of talk about this struggle and bring it to the forefront. So as much as it's bad, and it's still, that hasn't changed. It's been like a graph. It's been up and down, and we've gone through these struggles, and we're going through them now. But I don't believe we have the luxury of just sitting around not doing anything.
Thank you. Sonia?
Yeah, so my friend Ron hit on a lot of very, very important points. The bad part that you spoke about, Ron, about the struggle, it is a struggle on the inside, and we want to highlight that to the public. You hear people say, and you see a lot of, for instance, Facebook posts where people ask, well, where are the Black officers when things happen? Believe me, we are there.
Yeah.
And we are having conversations, we having arguments, damn near going to blows. There are officers who are standing strong for our communities, but there's a price to pay for that. You have to imagine that there is a price to pay for that. Even if you're in the public sector, I'm sorry, the private sector, you know that there's a price to pay when you speak out on racially charged issues. And so imagine being in a police department where the culture is such that there is systemic racism and abuse of power that's also can be systemic. And you want to talk about putting up your fist and saying, you know what, I don't like the way this is going down. There's going to be extreme pushback. It took me 27 years to be a captain. The first African-American female captain in my police department. 27 years despite my education, my background, my skill set, my experience. All of that, it meant nothing because of my face and my voice. So I want to just start with that's something that is real, okay? And we are struggling on the inside, but we struggle because we want to, and we love our people. We love all people. Speaking of that, it is extremely important that we have young Black men and women, young Hispanic men and women, young Asian men and women become law enforcement. You cannot have a voice, and I don't like using that analogy about sitting at the table. You cannot have a voice if you're not on the inside speaking out. You just cannot. And then there's also strength and unity in numbers and support. At the top tiers of law enforcement, you need people who look like the people who are sitting on this panel. Why is that? Because at the top tiers, that's where policy is made. That's where real strong and important decisions about how police departments are run are made. And if you are not sitting at that particular table that I just talked about, then you cannot elicit the change that we're going to need from the inside out, because you have to change the system, okay? And finally, I want to say, there is a myth that's part of the systemic issues in policing. And the myth is that the Black community does not like the police, which is as far from the truth as could possibly be. As a people, we respect authority and we respect law enforcement. My father was a police officer. I grew up in a small southern town where we had one Black deputy and everybody looked up to him. So policing is a noble profession. It is important in our society. And so I would welcome young people to come and join the ranks so that we can make the change that we're looking for.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Brother Jonathan.
So I listened just now, and my head was sweating a little bit because I disagree with some of that. I really do. I think that law enforcement, I think that, I was a law enforcement officer. I went in, I'm an Eagle Scout. I went in with a lot of those high hopes that my sister talked about. And I think that fundamentally that when we go into these systems, that I'll take, for instance, when we go into these systems, let me finish my thought. When we go into these systems, the systems actually end up changing us as opposed to us changing the systems. And it has nothing to do with the strength of the individual. It has something to do with the fundamental way that police departments all across this country are operating. When you look at places like Baltimore, Maryland, Chicago, New Orleans, those departments, some of the most abusive departments in the country, are led by Black people, period. And when we talk about law enforcement, well, the first thing that we should be talking about really is having an understanding of what are the laws that we are actually enforcing. And when we go to work as law enforcement officers, you and I both know that we don't really ever have those conversations about what are the laws that we're enforcing. These stop and frisk, the way that it was implemented in New York, whether it be trespassing over in DC. What is our role in this vast machine that has been put together that has been responsible for the oppression and destruction of Black people? And I say, when we go back, I agree that the theory of law enforcement is a noble profession, but the practice of law enforcement is anything but noble, particularly how it's been carried out in Black and brown communities in America. And I'm excited about the opportunity to bring forth an entirely new generation of law enforcement officers, of young Black and brown men and women to go into law enforcement. But the only way I want to bring them into that environment is with the full understanding of exactly what they're signing on for, because the bait and switch is at play. And once they get involved with it, they realize this is not what I really signed up for. And there is no mechanism inside these departments for most of us to actually go and have an outlet or even a way that we can address those problems. And so when we talk about the relationship with the law enforcement community, I'm here in Prince George's County right now. Our chief is almost like a known household name for being on TV, for apologizing for the actions of his officers inside of our community, because these are things that they do over and over and over and over again. And so I'm hoping that our conversation is centers around what can we do to leverage our abilities and our energy towards changing fundamentally our understanding and operation of policing in Black and brown communities, and pretty much all throughout America, because the way that it's done in Black and brown, the way that policing is done in Black and brown communities is fundamentally different than the way that it's done in white communities. We all know that.
It's true, you're right about that. But Brother Kenny.
I guess let me just say that my first, I guess, ever interaction with a law enforcement officer that I can remember is I was a child, trying to cross the street. It was heavy traffic going up and going down the street. And I remember watching this police officer see me trying to get across the street. And he stopped his car, put his lights on, and got out the car and stopped traffic on both sides. Said, "Go ahead, young man." And I thought to myself, wow, you know, that was nice of him. And I'm saying, the first time I saw that, I was like, hey, I want to be a police officer. As I became a teenager, I can remember waiting to go to school, standing at the bus stop, looking at detectives staring at me, wondering why they're staring at me. My first class is criminal law in high school. And as I'm getting ready to get on the bus, I'm being detained. And they're telling me that I fit the description of somebody who robbed someone. Then they realize it's not me. Now my attitude begins to change, because even when I'm trying to explain to them that it's not me, I'm being met with curse words. I'm being thoroughly disrespected in front of my other classmates. You know, they're telling them it's not him. You know, so my relationship began to change in how I perceived and how I viewed law enforcement. Although my father was a corrections officer for 20 years. And I knew a lot of his friends, and I knew a lot of other people who were law enforcement. I didn't respect them for being police officers, or I didn't respect them for being corrections officers. I respected them for being who they were in their relationship to me. So, but in 2011, when I got that phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning to rush to White Plains because White Plains police officers had shot and killed my father, and arriving at his apartment building, then going to the hospital, having a doctor tell me that they tried to save him and he didn't make it, and the doctor allowing me to see my father, and me seeing my dad laid on a stretcher dead, and police officers are standing there, and I just simply asked one question: what happened? You would have thought that I called everybody in there everything but a child of God, because it was at that moment that all of these police officers began to disrespect me, telling me that they didn't have to tell me, you know, shit, excuse my language, even following me outside, taunting me, provoking me, wanting me to engage them physically, which I had no problem doing because I fear no man but God. So that's not a problem. But before I knew it, there were 15 officers in a semicircle around me, laughing at me. And I can remember saying to the officer, a Spanish officer, the difference between me and other people you've done this to is you dealing with an intelligent black man, I know how to fight you. He looked me up and down, he smiled, and he said, fuck. I'm not gonna say that that made me start hating law enforcement, but it damn sure put a sour taste in my mouth, because I couldn't understand. You just took a man's life, and all I'm simply asking you is basic stuff about what happened. But from that point, even then, I never accused the officers of committing wrongdoing. I said, if the evidence shows that my father did anything to cause these officers to have to use deadly physical force, I will walk away. I'll walk away. I'll deal with my family. It is at that point we hear the audio. We hear the mocking, the yelling, the screaming, the taunting, calling him a nigger. You know, we hear all of these things. So it's at that point that I obviously said, oh no, I'm not going to sit here and allow this to happen. I'm going to do something. But rather than just run around yelling F the police, and for whatever reason other people do that, that's their business, you know, their relationships, their interactions is what they've had. I said, let's try to work together to try to affect positive change. Every other department in Westchester County, with the exception of the department that killed my father, would not work with me. The other departments would. White Plains Police Department wouldn't. Their response was, there's pending litigation. There's pending litigation. And like I told them, we don't have to talk about Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. We can begin to work towards preventing any future Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. But they didn't want to do it. So when I look at the community and trying to build relationships with law enforcement, I find that it's a very difficult task. And from what I found, from the most part in my experiences, it's not even the white officers who's giving me the problem. It's the Black and Hispanic officers that's giving me the problem. It's telling me I'm causing a problem. I'm making things difficult for them. I have more white officers come up to me and tell me, good job, keep doing what you're doing. I hope you get justice. What they did to your father was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. I have Black and Hispanic officers in my face arguing with me about what it is that I'm doing. And it's sad, but it doesn't stop me because, as I said before, I'm going to continue to stand on that front line. I'm going to continue to fight. And as long as I got people like you guys in my corner, I'm not worried about it, because should I fall, I'm sure one of y'all will pick the baton up for me. So I'm not really worried about that. But I'm going to shut up there because I can keep going, you know, and I'll let somebody else go.
Well, I want to welcome Alan Glover. He's my brother from Greenberg. He lives out in Vegas, and we give a different perspective. We want to have different perspectives. Alan, just introduce yourself.
I just want to say peace to the family. Salam alaikum. Everyone on this chat. This is in a line of many chats that myself and Brother Damon have. I am here in Vegas. I just want to give a greetings and peace to my captain, Brother Capt Dennis Muhammad, who I always give a major prop to. Okay? So I just want him to know and rest assured that your brother, your soldier, is out here and he ain't broke his discipline at all, okay? So I just want to say peace to the family, but very briefly, I am here in Vegas. I call Vegas the embodiment of I Am Legend, the film with Will Smith. This whole desert city has shut down from day one of this pandemic. A couple of things that I do notice in this dialogue that we're having. I have I would call them respectable friends on the police force out here based on a project that I am involved with. And Brother Captain, I hope to speak with you about this project here in Las Vegas.
Yes, sir.
There are, and I'm sure there are those with greater law enforcement knowledge than I. But I do see I bear witness to the, let's call it the bad cops who end up leaving the cities where they were and transplanting and moving to other cities where their track record is not as known and not as understood of the bad crap that they did in other cities. So then they come into Vegas to kind of have a whole new start. But it's a question that I just wanted to ask in this dialogue, because myself and Brother Damon talk about this with the images that we're seeing right now, where the pandemic is occurring and how law enforcement exercising their oftentimes very harassing and physical pushing of those in our community in certain instances of in the name of being social distancing and 6 feet. The question I want to ask is, are we on our own now? Are we in a period right now where we need to look completely and totally within? And to a certain extent, we're being placed in a position to not look at any external forces for assistance, because it really does seem like if we don't say nothing, nothing's going to get done. If we don't do something, nothing is going to get done. So I asked the question, and I asked this to Brother Minister Rasul Muhammad, who I speak to on the phone every now and then as well. Are we on our own now? Because it really seems like all areas are just falling apart all around us. And we know instruction-wise, we're staying put by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's like, hey, you know, work on yourself in this period. We're in the period of Ramadan right now. So I'm watching everything that's happening, and I'm wondering, are we on our own now? That's just a question I have.
All right. I'm going to jump to Captain D to introduce himself, and then we're going to get into the questions and start off. Are we on our own? Do we need to police our own communities? Because the police are reactionary, right? They come after the crime is committed, right? They you know, for us to believe or to us to think that the police actually stop crime is a fallacy.
Right.
It's a fallacy, and I don't care what police person is listening to this. We, especially in the Black community, right? The police do not stop crime; they react to the crime, right? So we have to understand that. So are we on our own? I think we've been on our own for a long time. But Captain D, you know, introduce yourself, and then we're gonna jump into that.
Well, you know, man, I mean, I'm so elated, man, and fired up from everyone who lent so much to this conversation. But let me say this. I'm going to first commend and salute every man and woman who's putting their life on the line every day in our community, trying to bring some sense of civility, peace. There are some good men and women in law enforcement that mean well. The sad part about that is that they're not the ones that speak out. We don't normally hear from the good cops, the so-called good cops. And because we don't normally hear from the so-called good cops, we put them all in the same lump. They all bad, as they do the same thing with the Black community. All of us is bad.
Right.
The sad thing about it is that I remember when Honorable Minister Farrakhan went to rebuild the nation, he started off not with the fruit of Islam, because we didn't have no fruit of Islam. It was men like Ron Hampton, Howard Estafo, Ronald Robertson, Brother Sylvester Johnson, Stephen Jennings. Many of the Black police officers were the ones who protected the minister in the early stage. I remember men like Ron Hampton, who is these men's shoulders that I know what policing look like. The sad part about is that when Ron and them started the Black police officers, it changed so many names, from the Afro-Black police officer, from the Black police officer to Nova. I don't know how many times it changed. But as it changed, it become to be more acceptable to be a part of the system. Noble, which stands for National Organization of Bootlicking Black Law. I'm sorry, forgive me. But nevertheless, I want to say this. Those of you who are in law enforcement, I want to talk to our captain, and I'm so proud to see a female captain. I trained the police department in Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan had the largest numbers of Black female in law enforcement in the country. And to see our sisters with stars and stripes is always honored. We got a sister that's in charge in Philadelphia. And so we're seeing our women moving up into the ranks of law enforcement. But here's the catch. The catch of those, you know, Ron, you know, sister, you know, my brother, that the higher you move up in the ranks of law enforcement, the more political you become. And the more political you become, the more or less you have power over the rank and file. And that's what happens in law enforcement. The rank and file begin to lose respect for the commanders because the commanders now doing the biddings of the mayor, doing the biddings of the chief, doing the biddings of the deputy chief. But with the problem I see, as I've trained law enforcement around the country, is that there is a serious desensitivity. That law enforcement officers, and y'all know this in y'all's training, is that when every time a police officer goes through the academy, they mean well. They really, really wants to get out there and get the bad guy. That's their mindset. And of course, when they get into and graduate, what do they put them in with that FTO or those SARs? They put them in the car with those SARs. What those SARs says? All that stuff that you learn in the academy, throw that in the backseat. And before you know it, 6 months later, a real rookie is talking like he's been with the department for 6 years. So he's no longer using the training that the citizens has paid for that will allow him to know how to relate to people of cultural differences, diversity training. They no longer using it. So they fall victim to what they call the good old boys club. You know, when you're in the department, you are part of that blue wall of silence. The reason why most of the commanders, Black commanders, are not effective because they're over a majority white department. And they don't want to they don't want to go against the FOP. So they become more compromising in their work in the Black community. And I like what you said, Brother Damon, you're right. The worst sometimes in how the brutality of us comes from Black police officers. I've learned that some of the brothers is more hard than the white police officers. You know why? Because our Black police officers, they get upset that they see Black people show more respect for their white partner than they show for them. So they have to prove that they're not Black. They want to prove to the white partner they blue. The sad part of what we're dealing with right now is that we are coming, and I like my brother Allen there. I miss you, dear brother, and I'm glad that you're holding on to your discipline. But let me say this. We are at the door now. And the door we at right now is community policing. Brother Damon, you did a post one time years ago where we know the root of law enforcement began with police chasing down slaves. That's the root of law enforcement. That's its origin. That's why when you talk about the paddy wagon, you talk about the Irish, that's the root of law enforcement. That's the root of community policing. It was never for them to police their own community. It was always to police us. So here we belong to a system where we now take on the same mentality where we police us. We are now have to deal with the reality. And the reality is like my brother said, you know, you belong to a system that we did not create. You can't go in and change that system. You might as well forget about it. We talk about the police officers, they get frustrated. I'm talking about the white officers because they say, we got that Black wall of silence. They get upset when they come into the Black community and there's a shooting and you can still smell the smoke. And they ask, well, what happened? What happened? We get quiet. But even though there's a Black wall of silence, you know, there's a blue wall of silence that exists in the police department. Look here, Ron. One of the things I do every time I do a sensitivity training, I ask this question. I asked, do the blue wall of silence exist in this department? The fact nobody say nothing. It's a
that it exists.
Fact that it exists. Nobody say, you'll never hear nobody say, yeah, it's. So I said, well, that's my point. Yeah. Well, listen, how are we going to ever trust law enforcement? You have a big problem trying to get African Americans or Black people to get into law enforcement. They had a big old recruiting thing years ago trying to get Black people. As the sisters say, it ain't that we don't respect law enforcement, but we don't see the example of those of us who are in law enforcement with the Stars and Stripes wielding the kind of power that would put that road cop in check. Somebody right. got to put that road cop in check. And we don't see that in the Black community. We don't see that among those with the Stars and the Stripes. So we lose faith in law enforcement as we see it today. And there's a new breed. There's a new breed of police officers. They ain't got no color line. They ain't about no color with them. They're not Black. They're not a police officer who happen to be Black. They Black who happen to be a police officer. They're not a Black person who happen to be a police officer. They're a police officer who happen to be Black. Yeah. So now there's no rules, Ron. The fraternizing in the department, police officers sleeping. Listen, man, one of the things that there's a book called Survival. And one of the things is dealing with is that when you work within a community, into a department like law enforcement, when you see the worst of human behavior, you become desensitized. Well, the Black community is desensitized when you see the worst of human behavior. But here's the problem. The problem is we don't care about the emotional well-being of law enforcement. There's no way you can continue to work in an environment where every time you look around, you're seeing a 13-year-old dead shot because they had the wrong colors on. It absolutely takes away your compassion. And then if you don't have the compassion and love no more, then you don't see the people as human beings. You see them as beasts. So you see a beast that meet a beast. So what do we have to do, in my humble opinion? I have no more desire to try to train law enforcement. You know what I've learned, Ron? I've learned I can't stop these guys from beating our people head. So let me focus my attention on teaching my people how to keep their head out the way. You understand? And I believe that if we start focusing more on teaching our people to respect authority first, the first authority they got to respect is God. The second authority they got to respect their parents. The third authority they got to respect the teachers. And then we talk about law enforcement authority. We have to teach our own people. I think it's a great opportunity right now that we need to formulate. This is what the minister said, right? He said, I would love to see the Black police officers around the country train 10,000 Black men in the community on how to police themselves. Y'all know what to do. Y'all know the training. Give us the training. And let us make our own community a safe and decent place. That you would never go into the Jewish community and see police violate the Jews. You'll never see that in the Italian neighborhood or the Irish neighborhood. Why do we see it in our community? Because we're the #1 abusers of ourselves. Until we stop doing it to one another, we make it very difficult for anybody to come in our community and to do it to us. So yes, we need law enforcement, but we need a law enforcement to have a respect for the community. And I don't mind working with the right police officer, but it has to be based upon mutual respect.
Exactly.
If it's not based upon mutual respect, we don't need you in the community. But I do believe y'all have something to learn, to teach us. This is the time for it. And I believe it would be the kind of turning point that we will be able to get our community back into some sense of civility.
Captain Dennis, thank you, brother. You touched on something, and I want the group to talk about it because we all experienced it, and we all seen the out after a shooting, the out after a cop is recorded making all type of different racial statements. They say we're going to have sensitivity training, right? That's, we're going to have sensitivity training. And Captain Dennis, you said something as someone who has done sensitivity training for police departments. You said you're going to stop doing it because of the fact that it ain't working with these with these people, because they already coming in with their prejudice, and they already coming in with their hate, and the badge is empowering them, empowering their hate, their prejudice, their biases, and their racism when they come in the Black community. So I'm gonna, Sonia, yeah, you waving your hand. Sonia, I want you to talk about sensitivity training when it comes to police officers.
This is a deep group right here. Woo-wee! I'm gonna call you Dr. Dennis. You ain't even Captain Dennis. You just Dr. Dennis. So I'm gonna start this off by saying, my ex-husband used to do diversity training for my police department, which really is what set me on the road to being treated a certain way in the police department, because he was my husband at the time. We were under consent decree. And so one of the parameters of that consent decree was to have diversity training. You know, you should probably interview him one day, Damon. He has some interesting stories. But what ended up happening as a result of him being the diversity trainer was an attack on me and my family, to include threats to him, to his bodily harm. If they could catch him on the road, do a traffic stop, and beat his behind. That was real. And so to Jonathan and to Dennis's points about how we change a police department, Dr. Dennis, I'm going to disagree that we have to do it probably from the outside in. I think it's going to take a combined effort from the outside in and then from the inside out. You cannot change a system if you are not part of the system. It's just impossible, in my opinion. However, I also agree with you about the, I'm sorry?
We can replace that system.
Okay, well, we know whatever, but the system has to be, you have to acknowledge the system. You can't just look at it and say, okay, well, you know, it's a system. We have to do something with that system. And also to Dr. Dennis's, I love calling you Dr. Dennis. Dr. Dennis's point, there are people, there are Black officers in particular, and I'm talking about executive officers who have some possibility of power to foment change, who have brought into the system. We see it every day across the country. I'm a member of Noble too. I'm a member of Noble because I'm an executive and because I want to know what's going on with my executive Black peers. And it disappoints me when something happens in a police department and the head of that department is a Black person and they do or say nothing. Organizations like the National Black Police Association, from which Noble was born, by the way, we should be standing at the forefront of these conversations.
That's right.
We should be out there with our fist up in the air. I don't have a problem doing that. That should be us. I totally agree with you. And I personally do not know what to do to have my peers understand the power that we could have if we wish to utilize it. And you know, it's so many parts to this. Is you know, I'm not even sure it's always that we drinking the blue Kool-Aid. I'm not sure that it's always that, you know, we have decided to buy into that those systemic issues. I think sometimes we just scared. We still slaves.
Come on now. All right.
Okay.
All right.
And so
All the way.
I'm glad to have these conversations. I'm glad to have pushback by all y'all doctors today, Dr. Jonathan, because that gets me to think, how do we address these issues? Kenneth, you're gonna make me cry. Brother, I didn't know all of that. I can't imagine what that's like. I can't imagine what it would have been like for me to be standing in that room and listen to my peers treat you that way. So what do we do? And I am honored and blessed to be part of this body to push this narrative, and I appreciate it, Damon.
Thank you. Ron?
You know, I don't it's a complicated thing. You can't solve the problem overnight. We understand that.
Yeah.
I could spend, for example, 15 to 20 minutes talking to you about the success that Black officers had from 1970 to say 1990. And I want to tell you, after an analysis of the success, it was all superficial because it did not change the culture of the institution.
There it is.
Yeah. See, so when I listen to you all talk, and it takes me back. And the thing that I have on some of you all is that I'm old as hell. The other thing that I have is that I was doing this from 1970 to 1994 myself. And the other thing is that I was a witness to some of the things that you all have witnessed that don't exist no more. I watched Black leadership in police departments, for example, Jonathan, change the whole police department. And I can tell you, my brother, that if I was a police chief, we would have a different police department, because when that shit happened, you would be gone. Now, you would be fighting for your job like I fought for my job. You didn't do that. And I can tell you that there were Black police officials around who did that, who did not take shit, and your ass was gone, and they spoke out. I remember when Ike Fullwood did the same thing that President Obama did when Trayvon Martin got shot and killed. He said that could be my son. That's what Obama said. Ike Fullwood said the same thing. And so they recognize that this shit has a color range to it. But if you somehow or another, when you listen to all of it, then you try to address it, you can't address it. Let me in the final analysis, let me tell you the answer to the question that the brother from Las Vegas raised. Is that we're on our own, my brother. We've been on our own all along. We ain't never had no help. When we went to the police department, we didn't go to the police department. I didn't go to the police department in 1970 thinking that somebody was going to help me. I went there, as a matter of fact, reluctantly, because I knew I didn't have no help. And when I got there, they guaranteed that I didn't have no help. So it didn't make no difference. So, but the help I had was the help that I had in my heart, that I wasn't going to be taken advantage of, that I was Black. I don't care how blue they wanted you to be, I was Black. And every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a Black face. I have a mirror at my house right before you go out the door. And I used to say to myself, and I've had that there for some time, that my point is that I wanted to make sure that the same Black man that left in the morning was the same Black man that came back in the evening.
Come on now.
See, that's what I'm talking about. But the draw, now listen to this. The draw of the institution is powerful.
Yeah.
The draw of the institution is powerful. They pay you, and they don't pay you to be no radical now. They pay you to be so they pay you to follow orders. But that doesn't say the reason why the minister in Chicago worked with those brothers that Captain Dennis talked about is because those brothers had resisted the power of the institution. They were not slaves to the institution. That's where I got my up and comings from. I worked there, but I wasn't a slave.
That's right.
I determined my own destiny there. That's why I went as an officer, I left as an officer, because they could not figure out how to buy me. And there are a whole lot of Black police officers and white who are like that too. So I know you are not counting all of them together, but my point is, as I close, that it's complicated, y'all. I know that's simple, but it is. It's really complicated. And the things that you all talked about, Jonathan, we've been having this conversation ever since when I went on the police department in 1970.
Yeah.
I had this same conversation with Damon when I met him. And I said, when I met Damon and Damon was talking to me about this shit, I said, damn, this brother should have been there when I was there in 1970. Because he understands what all this shit is about. The comment I made about Captain Dennis, Who would have thought that a brother named Captain Dennis Muhammad from the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would be in a police department training police officers and citizens how to do work in the community? We could have been doing that alone. In our community today, there's a group of people called credible messengers. That's not new.
Yes.
That's not new. I know some brothers who were credible messengers before credible messengers.
That's right.
That's what I'm talking about. When the Nation of Islam was here in Washington, D.C., Garden, Kenilworth Gardens, they were credible messengers.
That's right. That's right.
The history, that's what one thing we had to talk about, and we talked about it in NBPA, and I swore to it, that if you're gonna do something, pick up a book and read your history. Read the history of what it is that you're about to do. Marvin Dulaney did an excellent thing. The brother from New York that wrote Black and Blue did an excellent thing. Sister who wrote the book about blacks and the police in the city of Houston and in Atlanta. Read those books and then you will understand the institution we deal with. All the changes and success that we've been able to have has been fleeing at best because they were not changes that address the culture of the institution. They were topical and what's the other term for, they were not systemic in the sense of what, and the white boys were smart enough to stand back and let those kind of things happen because they knew that at the end of the day, they were gonna get the helms of the police departments back. And the same police departments that had all them black, I could name 20 police departments that had strong black leadership, and I can tell you today, there ain't one black person in those 20 police departments now. Wow. The more things change, the more they change. And that's exactly what has happened. So, but I'd be remiss if I would allow you all, and I know you're not doing it intentionally, as much as we have struggled, there's some bright moments. There's some times like the theme for Amnesty International is light a candle in the dark. Well, there's been some candles that's been lit, but they've been blown out too. They've really been blown out. But we don't have anything, we don't have no reason to be sitting in the corner crying. We got to we got to go after them crackers and wear their ass out, excuse me. That's what we had to do. I'm telling you, and don't take no prisoners, because we don't, what do we owe them in it? We don't owe them nothing.
Come on, Rob.
We don't owe them anything. Come on now. Them white boys didn't do nothing for me, Damon, Jonathan.
They give you their ass to kiss. Why
That's
you
what I'm talking about.
I mean,
so we got to stop acting like we don't owe them nothing. We don't owe them nothing.
Talking about acknowledging them. To be honest with you, from the time this country was written, the man told us in the Dred Scott case, he said, listen, there's no law by which the white man is bound to respect that has to do with a black man. Yet we find ourselves in this precarious position and sign ourselves up to an institution that we're going to enforce their laws? That's preposterous.
Come on. And look, when we were riding in scout cars, I'm gonna finish with this. When we was riding in scout cars, I got out of a scout car almost the first year I went to the police precinct. But I'm telling you, when they would pull people over, we was at 14th. They pulled people over. This guy was driving a Cadillac, and he did not waste his words. He said, I'm gonna pull this guy over driving the Cadillac. And I say, why, is there a law against driving a Cadillac? No, see, it was a black man driving the Cadillac. This around 1973, 1974. You're black
on the planet.
It was something wrong with that. But I told him up front, I said, I'm not getting out of the car. The man didn't do anything wrong, so you on your own. I'm not gonna be a part of that. And see, that's part of the strategy too, that some have used, and we had to continue to. Don't be a part of that criminal shit, and if you can, even report it. And we've had history in reporting these kind of incidents, and the importance of now, is there going to be a backlash? Of course, there's going to be a backlash. You got to expect that it's going to be a backlash because it's not your system. It's not my system, and then there's no protection in the system for somebody who's going to speak out against it. But I knew lawyers like Jonathan. there were people like Jonathan in 1970. One of them was named Ted Williams. And he not only would come down to the police precinct and get my ass, he would go with me to IAD. That's the kind of stuff that you have to do. So there's been, and again, I wasn't the only one. Them brothers that Captain Dennis was talking about, those were some of the most powerful brothers I've ever seen in my life. And every last one of them officers, they wasn't no officials. And they was guarding walls in Chicago because they didn't give them no assignment. Yeah, their assignment was guarding the wall down by the waterfront, that kind of shit on the docks. So, but we've come a long way, but there's no gleaming success in having gone that route if we all of a sudden find ourselves in that situation again, because the change has not occurred in the kind of volume that has changed the culture of the institution. That is still there.
All right. Jonathan?
I think we need to have zero tolerance for activities, the nefarious activities. The real fundamental problem with police institutions is the discipline is so inconsistent, all right? So you got, there's a woman up in Montgomery County called some black men niggas on video, right? Does she still have a job? She shouldn't have a job no more, right? It's a police department over here in Fairmount Heights. I'm suing them right now. The officer snatched up a boy, put him in a chair, and held him there in the chair for 4 hours before he deposited him in the jail, right? He got suspended, but he's still held with pay. Maryland has the worst police officers' Bill of Rights law in the nation. It protects them so departments can't fire nobody.
Right. Worse for us, but better for the police.
Yeah, worse for us, but real good for the police. They get a time period where they don't have to talk to anybody about the incident that they just beat somebody half to death over. Get the department actually can keep them on while they're being investigated all the way up until the point where they're indicted. So a little small department, you got to carry this bad officer financially for however long it takes before he's determined that he can be fired. In the bigger agencies, you got to go through all kinds of boards, and really what it needs to be is it needs to be instant, it needs to be decisive, and discipline needs to be consistent. They put all these policies in place because you did have a lot of abuses inside police departments where so-and-so didn't like you, now all of a sudden you out of a job. So then the result came when we're going to protect the police officers with these bills of rights. And now these bills of rights go all the way over to the other side of the pendulum. And the reality is we need a little bit of both. Police officers need to be protected on their job. That's what a union's for. But managers and command staff need to be able to discipline somebody. It needs to be instantaneously and swift. I'm going to be volunteering to become a police chief someplace. You know, I might have a conflict of interest, but you know, I want to volunteer. I'm like, look, I'll do this job for y'all for about 3 months. I'm gonna go ahead and set the pace and let you see how I would do it. You know, and we might have the department trimmed down to a few good officers, but we won't have them trimmed down. You know, because to be honest with you, I believe communities of color are over-policed. I believe that we don't need to have these institutions in our communities as much as they are, to the extent that they are. And I think the solution really is empowering our own youth to become our own police. And it's been done. It's even been done in white communities. Right. They got the little. I'm an Eagle Scout. When they had the police explorers, they put on the uniform, they run around, telling on people. And so we should be doing some of that in our community. Yeah. Right, and letting young people start experiencing the roles of governing our own communities. We have ceded too much of our autonomy and our independence to people who have none of our damn interests at heart. None. Yeah. And it goes not only with policing. I always say this: policing is simply the most visible portion of the fivefold institution. I don't even call it a system anymore. I don't like to even call it a system. Systems are consistent. Systems have uniform rules. Systems, you can predict the outcomes. With the criminal justice system, you can't predict any outcomes. It's based on color. In one area of the country, it's this way. In the other area of the country, it's that way. When you get down to judges, this one rules this way, and that one rules that way, and they all say it's part of a system. Well, policing is just a first element, the most visible element of the entire hodgepodge. But really, what we need to be doing is looking at is de-empowering these institutions that have been allowed to have power in our communities. You don't have to have a police department in your community. Some charters can be drafted to not include a police department in your community, right? Mm-hmm. You can actually choose to hire, if your city says, you know what, we want to choose to hire private detectives to investigate the murders, that's how it can be dealt with. If your community wants to hire private security to do certain things, that's the way it's to be dealt with. And it happens in other communities, just not ours. We depend on people to do it that don't have our interests at heart. I'm kind of over the police thing, to be honest with you now. I mean, I'm a little biased because, you know, I don't give a shit no more. Because I was a police officer and I went there with the best of the goddamn intentions in my heart to serve my country. And my father, who was a twice convicted convict, he told me when I was at graduating police academy, he said, man, of all the things my son could have been, damn, right? But I thought that I was doing something the right way. Institutions change people who go there. We don't change the institutions. You can't tell me, Sister Pruitt, that you're the same person that signed up when you signed up. I'm
actually a better person.
Okay.
Because see, listen, I never lost my way. Never.
I didn't say you were a worse person. I said you couldn't say you were the same person.
No, I'm not the same person. And I like to think that I did something, even if it was just a small thing, to make some kind of you know.
We all made good changes in the police department. We all made positive influences in the police department, even the correctional officers. We all have done positive. We've influenced, whether it be an inmate that we had to. I want to write. My next book I'm gonna write is about Tails taking somebody to jail. Those conversations when he was driving somebody to the jail, you know. And I would tell him, man, look, man, I'm gonna pull over here to this convenience store because I know you up on this murder charge. You want to get a cigarette before you go because you ain't gonna have no cigarette for a long time. You'll do that for me. I'm gonna even let you call your mom for the patrol car. That's how I would do it. You know.
Kenny. But see, wait, Jonathan, let me say this, man. See, you're absolutely right. I don't care what you go into, but when you come out, you're going to be different.
Different.
I had that experience because I was in the military. The whole idea of going into these institutions is the transformation of being independent to you now being a part of the team and doing what they do. Fortunately for independence, there are those who slip by.
That's right.
But institutions do exactly what it is that they are designed to do, and that they change people. They really do. And so those individuals who work within those institutions and then continue to find their way in independence of the institution have to be able to, you had to be able to withstand it. That's why when I was at the university and when I go on my talks, I don't tell people not to consider law enforcement. I want them to consider law enforcement, but I want them to also understand what it is that they're getting into and the changes that's going to take place. Because see, nobody's going to pay you. I don't care what it is that you're going to do. Nobody's going to pay you to do a job and do it the way you want to do it.
That's right.
They want you to. They're not only going to train you to do the job, you have to be able to do it the way they want you to do it.
Right.
What we can do is we can struggle against those norms and accept the unacceptability part of it, but we can make the changes. And successfully, there's individuals who have made those kind of changes and adaptations within the structure of institutions. But that's just the nature of institutions. They're not going to be satisfied with that. They work at you every single day, trying to get you to be what it is that they want you to be.
Let me say this, Ron. I think, and it's a good point. You know, we get kind of mixed up in understanding law enforcement. Black people have a different attitude about law enforcement than law enforcement have about the Black community. Number one is that we think the police officer is supposed to be nice. But it's sometimes hard to be nice as a police officer. You just got the word from your wife, your daughter just broke her braces. It's kind of hard to be nice, but it does not take away you being professional. See, we have to keep people professional. They're not joining the department to be nice. We are paying you to be professional. And when you start seeing people no longer acting professional to the people that they're paying their pay, then that's right. Remember now, we had a bitter taste of law enforcement, not because what we see recently, but when we were looking at Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights era, it was Bo Connor and the police that we seen hitting the people with the butts of guns, sicking the dogs on them. See, we never seen law enforcement as friend. We seen law
you're right.
enforcement
Yeah.
as foe. So,
Right.
so the mentality of how we see them has not changed. I think, and I want to commend you. See, Ron, you are to me the example of how we should see a brother in law enforcement. The sad part about most Black police officers is that it's only after you out the game that you become effective. You see? I mean, if we, you know, and that's sad. Then they got this dude on television every time there's a national problem. Who do they go? They get this dude Alexander. Well, who made him? Yeah. Who made him the face and the poster child for Black law enforcement? But y'all ain't challenged that. What's his name? I want to see Ron on CNN News. I'd rather see
the brother. He used to be a police officer. He used to be a police officer in New York.
Cedric Alexander.
Yeah, Cedric Alexander.
Oh, please, man.
That time was down in DeKalb County. I know who you're talking about. That's
yeah. He used to be he used to be with Noble, and he was down in.
We ain't live, are we?
Yeah, but they also have this. But there's this brother though. There's this brother that be on there sometime that was up in New York City. I can't think. Damon know who I'm talking about. I just can't think of his name. But he used to be with 100 Blacks. What
you talking about Mark Claxton?
Eric Adams?
Mark Claggett. Yeah, Mark Claggett. Oh. Right. Yeah. No, you're right. And they soft spoken. They all they doing is selling a bunch of goods. But at the end of the day, they there for themselves though, Captain Dennis. They there to glorify themselves. They not gonna say nothing controversial. No. They're not gonna say nothing controversial. Yeah. Alexander didn't say nothing controversial the whole time he was doing all that shit.
That's right. Never. That's why we got to have a Ron Hampton up there now. All right? Give it to him straight with no chaser, brother.
Ron, you say you went in as an officer and came out as an officer. I went in as an officer and came out as a criminal defendant.
Hey, Kitty, from a community perspective, when we're talking sensitivity training, in your work in trying to build a relationship between the community and the Black community, your experience with the talk of politicians and police management in dealing with sensitivity training.
Well, I think we really don't have to change the question that Brother Glover asked when he said, "Are we on our own?" Because it applies to that. And the short answer is yes, we are on our own. I say that because, and you know this firsthand, Damon, the day my father was killed, not one Black law enforcement officer stepped up and said a thing, except Damon Jones.
Wow.
I had some Black officers say that I better not say anything to them in reference to my father being killed, who were on the White Plains Police Department. A lot of tough talk from him, but as my big brother Captain D knows, I don't worry about tough talk. You know, I don't worry about that. We're on our own because I watched a district attorney sit me in her office and promise a full and fair investigation with a PBA mug sitting on her desk.
Exactly.
We're on our own.
Wow.
We're on our own because you put trust in the system and you believe that the Constitution was going to protect your father, that it was the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable search and seizure, and that no warrant shall issue without probable cause. and that they didn't have a warrant, they didn't have permission, and they didn't have exigent circumstances. But yet and still, they still took the door off his hinges, fired an electronic taser at him, beanbag shotgun him 4 times, and then shot him and killed him, and said that he posed an imminent threat.
Yeah.
So are we on our own? We are
Of course.
certainly on our own.
We are.
I trust the system. When there was no true bill, county level, I said, well, when we go to civil court and we sue, that just maybe now the evidence is going to come out that didn't come out on the county level, and these officers will be held accountable. But they still came back with no true bill. Even then, there, they found for the city. It's been 2 years and my family is still in the appeal process. We are still awaiting a decision from the Second Circuit. Do I believe that we're gonna win it based on the 4th Amendment? I do. But at the same time, as Brother Jonathan said, you know, black man has no rights by which a white person is bound to respect.
That's right.
So when they say, are we on our own? We are most certainly on our own. And I can remember when I got that decision in the courtroom and I walked outside and I'm in front of these cameras and I'm trying to keep it together. You know, I honestly waited for all the cameras to leave before I broke down and was walking away. I got a phone call from Captain D, and I'll never forget the phone call because he told me, if you want to cry, cry. But tomorrow, you have to go back out there and you have to show that community that you are not defeated, that you did not give up,
Right.
that you are still going to fight. And as hard as it was, as bad as it hurt, I did it. I remember putting Fight the Power on the video and saying, it's not over. You know, y'all won that round, but I'm hard-headed. I don't know when to stop. You know, I don't know when to stop. You know, I say it's a gift and a curse. So when they say, are we on our own? Or when the brother raised that question, yes, we're on our own. This is why, yeah, we need to police our own communities. I certainly believe that. I can walk down the street in my block and see something get ready to happen and look at those young boys and be like, knock it off.
That's
and
right.
It stops. It stops. Okay? I can even see police officers pull up there and they start saying something and the young boys start arguing with them. And I look at them and say, stop. And they walk away. You know? Or I could say, go ahead. And they're gonna give them all this yelling and screaming and cursing and everything else. We need to know that. I'm a strong believer that, you know, that kind of get in where you fit in type of thing. Like I say, I believe I was put here to protect people. I'm a 30+ year student of martial arts. I hold several ranks in different systems. Okay, so I teach people how to defend themselves hand to hand. I have no problem teaching the whole community how to do that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's not a problem for me, okay? And I'm not looking for a dollar bill for that because I believe you want for your brother and sister that what you want for yourself. I believe that, you know, so I'm going to give that. If that's my skill that I can give back, I'm going to give that back, okay? Now, I don't know nothing about farming, okay? I don't know how to do that, okay? So I would be the warrior of the tribe, I guess, or one of them, you know? But I don't know how to farm. I can cook, you know? You know, but yes, we are on our own, and yes, it hurts. And yes, it hurts when you talk to these elected officials, or they say one thing, and then they turn around and they do the total opposite of what they told you they were going to do in this closed-door meeting, which is why I don't believe in closed-door meetings. I don't believe it. You want to talk to me? Let's talk to everybody. Because, see, you're not going to say one thing to me behind the scenes.
Yes.
When you get out there in the public, you say something different, because then I'm going to get my feelings. And even though I know that we should never allow our emotions to supersede our intelligence, sometimes I get there. Sometimes I get it, you know, and I really don't want to, because you've already depicted me as the angry black man. Okay, I can remember being in the DA's office and we're waiting to listen to the audio, and one of the DAs said to me, I didn't know whether to speak to you or not. And I was like, well, why is that? Oh, because you look like you was going to jump on me. I said, really? I said, well, how does a person look when they're about to jump on you? You know, I said, that's number one. I said, and if I was, you'd have been jumped on already. I'm like, I'm not gonna wait. You know, so yes, Brother Allen, to your question, are we on our own? We most certainly are. And it's sad, and until we realize that, we're gonna keep going through the same old thing over and over and over again, because too many of us have this attitude of it's not my problem until it's my problem. You know, I travel. I have people ask me to come different places, do different things, to speak at different events. You know, they don't pay me to do that. I do that because I believe in what it is that I'm doing. You know, and another thing, as a perfect example, and I'm gonna stop here. When we say yes, we're on our own. When my father was killed and I tried to get attention, I wanted the media on this. They said absolutely nothing. They wouldn't talk about it. They tried to sweep it under the rug. Because of social media, I put it up on Facebook. I have a lot of friends, especially in the martial arts community, on my page. Please share this out. Please share this out. People began to share it out. Look what happened to my friend's father, or my brother's father, and things like that. And then a friend of mine who's also one of my attorneys had a relationship with Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! She took it and she decided to say something. And once she did, then the floodgates opened.
That's right.
Okay, because now everybody wants to talk about it now, because Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez talked about it. You know, so
right.
yes, but I had to get out there and I had to find ways to maneuver. I had to find different inventive ways of getting it out there. This is why people constantly see me on my social media pages. I never stop posting justice for Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. And I'm constantly talking about that I'm going to get justice for my father. I mean, so much so that now we have a movie that has won several awards in these film festivals. And it's making its way through the film festival circuit. And if nothing else, even with this film, I hope that it can be used as a tool of showing law enforcement what not to do. This is what you don't do when you go to someone's home and you're saying that this person might be emotionally disturbed or something like, or have some type of mental health issue. Calling a man with a mental health issue a nigga and banging on his door for 90 minutes demanding that he open the door is not going to work. It's not going to work. So again, yes, we are on our own, and I'll stop there.
Hey, I want to jump in on something that you pointed out, Kenneth, about being on our own, and then you gave some great examples. But I want us not to forget Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed down in Georgia. We need to mention him today. I think it might be his birthday today, but at least I know that we're doing a virtual 2.23 mile run for him. And so for me, that highlights this conversation surrounding us being on our own, because I think we have just reverted all the way back to the 1940s or maybe even the 20s, when a man can't just jog, be confronted by armed men and not be able to defend himself. Because what that said to me was they did not see him as a man. In this country, that person, Ahmaud, this black man minding his business in a country where we're supposed to be free in public spaces to do what we do, was not seen as a man who could defend himself from people who were approaching him with guns. Right. And so I've been thinking a lot about that as I'm thinking about all the things that you all are saying. I'm going to be, musing over that. I'm sure I'm going to have some ideas come from that. But I am concerned about, I have two sons. They're 16. They're just becoming men. And I'm like, one of my sons likes to run. I'm like, so he can't just go out and just run and mind his business without being accosted? And somebody gonna talk about they're gonna arrest him on a citizen's arrest with a gun? That's craziness. And so to the question about whether we are on our own, yeah. Well, but like most of you have said, we've been on our own for a while. What are we gonna do with this information? How are we going to make sure that our communities are safe?
So, you know, I had a friend of mine send me a text, and we were talking about that situation that happened with this brother jogging, and she said to me, I think black men are scared. She said, I think they're terrified now. I said, well, in my personal opinion, being in this fight, getting justice for my father for the past 9 years, I said, they've been afraid. I said, I think many black people suffer from a form of Stockholm syndrome. They begin to side with their abusers. So if I tell you that Pookie got shot down the street, you automatically assume that Pookie did something wrong, but maybe Pookie was in a master's program. You know, we just call him Pookie because he's from the block. Okay, so, you know, but I say that because I know myself, me being the man that I am, and I can't speak for anybody else. If I was walking down the street and I saw my sister or my brother being assaulted by a law enforcement officer, and I know that they did absolutely nothing wrong to warrant that, I'm getting involved.
Right.
I'm getting involved. Okay? And there's no way. Like the sister was in the was it the Waffle House where the police officers jumped on her and ripped her clothes off and everything? I said to somebody, I would have gone to jail that day. And they said, why? I said, because there's no way I would have sat there and let them do that to the sister. There's no way. I said, the man in me would not have allowed that. And they said, well, you don't know her. I don't need to know her. I don't need to know her to know that that could have been my sister. That could have been my wife. That could have been my mother. And no, and there's no way. So just like with your 16-year-old sons, it's like, no, there's no way in the world I'm going to stand there and watch that happen. I had a conversation with somebody where a police officer stopped the young man and he detained him and he grabbed him. And the question was, what did he do? Why is he under arrest? The officer said, you don't know the law. So I said, I do. So then he says, I said, well, why are you placing him under arrest? He said, he's not under arrest. I said, he's not? He said, no, he's being detained. I said, oh. I said, so you are depriving him of his free will to leave the area, are you not? He said, yes. I said, well, then you have in fact placed him under arrest. He said, he's not under arrest. So I said, leave. She got mad at me because I told the young boy to leave. So
that's what the law says. But that's what the law says.
You know? Right. So yes, I mean, look, for me, like I said, me, the man that I am, could not allow that to happen. So, and yes, many of our black men are terrified. They are afraid. They'll jump on me or you, but they won't stick their chest out. When they see these law enforcement officers standing there, they won't do it. Is it easier for you to jump on me, or there's no consequence for you jumping on me? But you know, there's good consequences and bad consequences. No, and I don't have a problem going to jail because someone says, well, Brother Kenneth got locked up. Why? Because the police was jumping on Sister Sonia and he got involved in it. So they locked him up. Fair enough. Just put something on the books and come visit me.
Exactly.
We do a GoFundMe before you leave us, brother.
You know what, man? I just want to comment before I let AJ go with some of the questions that he had, I want to comment as a witness to the fight and the struggle that Kenneth has been going through for calling for justice and accountability for the killing of his father. We have saw community leaders punk out. We have saw pastors, Black pastors, punk out. We have saw politicians punk out. We went down to Al Sharpton 3 or 4 times for him to punk out. And I'm saying that because it has to be, this has to be on record, right? And I have to say that. We sat there with Al Sharpton 3 times, you know, for him to play politics because some of his pastor friends in Westchester was close with the district attorney, Janet DeFiore. And if anybody from National Action Network sees this video, then y'all could ask him, right? And if he wants to deny it, then why didn't the National Action Network address this when they had chapters in Westchester County? So I watched Kenny do this with his lawyers and family and friends that surround him, and he has never once badmouthed law enforcement, right? He never called for the death of any law enforcement officer. He handled this, and he is still handling this with grace and respect for everybody. But also, he's been stern in requesting justice for his father. And I think, you know, having the movie will move forward in the story. And I hope Al Sharpton and all the national NAACP and all the national civil rights organizations go see the movie, because y'all have been absent on a national level. You have police officers on audio calling a man a nigger, and there's no outrage. There was no real outrage in Westchester County. There was no outrage. This should have been national news. You have audio of police officers calling a man a nigger, then killing him. But you have preachers locally in New York wearing a hoodie for Trayvon.
Right.
Right? Kneeling with Kaepernick, but not addressing that white cops called a Black man a nigger and killed him.
In their own backyard.
Exactly.
That's right.
So then fast forward to 2019, you have a white cop in uniform sexually harass a mentally ill Black woman, not once, not twice, 3 times.
In her house, in uniform.
In her house, in uniform, while he was working.
On duty.
There has been no outrage in Westchester County for this. So you wonder why we don't get the respect we deserve as Black people from this criminal justice system, because we do not push back correctly on this criminal justice system. We do not push back correctly on our local police departments or whatever law enforcement departments that are violating our humanity. I don't give a damn, man. And we all should be ashamed of ourselves, Black cops especially, because y'all have punked out. Y'all had cowered out, and y'all still punk out and coward out for the fight because you want to get a paycheck. You don't want to get cut out of overtime. Look at Mount Vernon. You had a white man punk out a whole black police department with black people, with guns. With guns, black people with guns. We're the only group in the nation that legally carry guns, and we scared. What the hell is, what is wrong with us? We're the only group in the nation that legally carry guns, and we're scared. And we're scared.
Got them as collector's items.
So you might as well take that badge you got and just call it a slave tag if you're not willing to fight for your community. If you're not willing to fight for your community, what the hell? See, because we're just doing nonsense, man. And we have to address it, whether it hurts people's feelings or not. If y'all don't want to speak to me, I don't care, because most of y'all don't speak to me anyway. So it don't matter. But as black law enforcement, man, when you see something like the Kenneth Chamberlain killing, like the killing of DJ Henry, like the killing of what went on down south with these white cops killing us, you have the obligation, God damn it, to say something.
Absolutely.
Or just disappear. And don't say that you're black. Say you're a Negro officer. Don't use black. Don't say you're a black cop. Don't say you're a black correction officer. Don't say you're a black court officer. Say you're a Negro, because you're scared. And just, you know what? Just admit that you're scared.
I accept that too, yeah.
Because if you're running a police department and officers, white and black, are running amok in your community, then you're scared to hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. What the hell we got black people in power for if they ain't gonna do nothing? You politicians too. You don't pass laws. You get in position, and you don't pass one goddamn law to hold these cops accountable. Nothing. Nobody goes to jail. Nothing happens. No damn grand jury. No grand jury. Look what happened to the brother down there. Once the DA brought the state in to investigate, they arrested his ass and his brother. Because we know, and I don't care what district attorney says.
His son.
There's a relationship. His son. There's a relationship between the district attorney and the police department.
Police department.
So any attorney that is not is lying to you.
There was a post on Instagram, and it said it wasn't because they seen the tape, it's because we seen the tape.
Exactly.
And clearly what you witnessed and what I just said was the origin of law policing was chasing slaves, right? This is what they were doing in their mind. They was chasing a runaway. Mm-hmm. In their mind, they took on that same mentality.
Yeah.
That they had the power to arrest this slave, to take this slave. And let me add to what you just said, because there's no question. We will have to come to this juncture in the room where, as Brother Allen said, are we on our own? You know, we got a training in the Nation of Islam that you don't hear nothing about no police pushing up on no fruit of Islam. But you won't find none of our children in the juvenile detention centers either. Why? Because we teach our young people to respect authority. And even though we look at what happened to our brother and he lost his life, what about the brother in Flint, Michigan, the black guard, who was trying to tell the man to put on a mask or the social distancing, and one of us killed him?
Right.
There's no You know, I mean, there's an outcry, but not like the other outcry. We cannot no longer see brutality in a color. Black brutality is no more better than white brutality.
Exactly.
And we have to begin to start addressing internally our problem. Now, we're not going to solve it overnight. I totally get it. But I do believe that there's an opportunity for us. For Nietzsche say, in chaos is opportunity. Right. What is the opportunity? As I used to hear Obama say, it's a teaching moment. Well, what is this teaching moment? Well, there's no question. We're on our own. So why don't we take people like my man, Ron, all of these brilliant law enforcement retired or already they're still in the department and may come into the hood and I could put 1,000 men in front of you, 10,000 men, train us, teach us law enforcement as you was taught, and let us police our own community. And we can make it very difficult for anybody who could come in our community with any agenda other than agenda to be able to serve us. Let me say this, and y'all know this about law enforcement, as you said it, Damon. See, law enforcement is not proactive, it's reactive.
Reactive.
And law enforcement is nothing but a deterrent. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a deterrent. So we have to produce in our community a deterrent. What's more a greater deterrent than when you see 100 brothers standing on the corner, man, talking to them little youngins, yo, brother, come on now. You're not going to disrespect the elderly over there. Keep it moving. You see? Our young people respect us. How are we going to be afraid of our children? Grown men afraid of their children. You know, so we got to get back. That was the beauty of why I started the Peacekeepers. We have Peacekeepers in 36. I remember, Ron, I met you in Birmingham at London when you started the first chapter over there. We were over there. We were over there in London, England. We got a chapter in London, England. But we have to train our people. We're ready, man. We're more ready than we ever been. We need to be training our people to police their own community. And I guarantee you, we need to do it now because it's getting ready to get chaotic out there in the street because one more incident, incident, it takes one incident for this thing to go up in smoke. And if they let these officers off after they brought them to court and charged them and they give them a non-guilty, then I'm telling you, it's going to be like my man OJ. Man, black folks,
that's right.
See?
Yeah.
See, it can go like that anytime.
I'll tell you that.
And if we police our community when that happens, then they go to neighborhood. Yeah. So we need to be ready to make sure we put a circle around our community so we don't tear our own neighborhood down if that becomes the issue.
Hey, brother Captain.
Hey, you know what?
I agree with you.
You gave me an idea. I have been, you know, while I'm sitting here listening to everybody and trying to figure out for me what policing our community looks like, I think I had put that in a box. Because whenever I think of policing, because, you know, I'm law enforcement, I think of it a certain way. But I'm liking what I'm hearing from you. I like the idea that we would go with our collective knowledge into communities and teach us how to be responsible for one another. Because that's what you're really saying. And I'm in on that. I'm about to retire, which has nothing to do with me being outspoken because I've always been that. But it just frees up my time. Okay. So I like what you're saying, and I appreciate all of y'all for these ideas. I've been doing a lot of writing. So I just say let's get to it.
Brother Captain, she just got drafted in the ranks. So
what'd you say, Damon?
You got one more fight left in you, Ron. Hey, Ron, you got one more fight left in you, man. We ain't letting you retire. All right? We pulling you out of retirement, Ron. I'm letting you know that now.
Yeah, all right. I'm with you, man. Whatever you say. I totally agree. Because you know, Rem Wilson here in Washington D.C. was doing some of the same stuff, and then plus I work with Tyrone and them at the Alliance of Concerned Men doing the credible messenger stuff. So you know, I got a little bit more left.
I know you do. I know you do. I know you do, brother.
I just want to say something real quick. First off, I'm enjoying this wealth of information from this all-star panel right here. But I have to tell y'all, I've sat down and wrote down a whole lot of questions, and y'all have answered questions before I can answer them. I was going to talk about brother, man, Sonia just brought him up. It's just like, y'all have made this like, so I just sat back and listened for a while. But I just wanted to say a couple of statements real quick. As somebody who's not in law enforcement, I know we was talking about Black police in the community. And I know there's been times, and I've said this before, there have been times where I'd rather be stopped by a Black and a white cop. I mean, two white cops rather than a Black and a white cop, because the Black cop is usually will show out more and come down crazy on me in front of the white cop like he has something to prove. Like I'm almost safer getting stopped by two white cops sometimes, which is the craziest thing in the world because of how we treat ourselves. We had a situation like that with the R&B star Jeff Red. He was across the street from his house, and there was a white and a Black cop. They stopped at the car, and it was a Black cop that was threatening to pull him out of his window and threaten him with bodily harm. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's how we treat each other. Like we have to prove to the white cop that we can be hard on them too, or I don't know what that's about. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like it's really crazy. And I just want to say to Brother Ronald, you know, as somebody who's not in law enforcement, a lot of the youth especially do not see cops that like you, cops that what you described and how you were. We don't see that, and a lot of the youth don't see that. You know what I'm saying? We just see a criminal justice system that treats you better if you're rich, white, or rich, white, and guilty better than if you're Black and innocent. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, there is not a lot of respect. They don't see that. And one of the questions, and you kind of almost answered it, one of the questions I was like, how do we get back to that kind of policing? How do we get back to that? Because that's what we need. My other question is Sonia kind of brought up, it was like, what does police in our community look like? But she kind of touched upon that. And I just wanted to also say again to Kenneth Chamberlain, I say this every time, I got to give him a lot of respect because to be in that position and to start a foundation called the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform, like nobody could blame him if he was on some real fuck the police mentality after that happened and after the cops treated him the way he did. And I would love to think that I would be on that same level if that happened to me, but I don't know that I would be. And I've stood with this brother since I've been back in New York since 2014 and we did Black Westchester. I've stood with him. I've seen him go down to every other family member who had to go through something like this, and he stood with them and he spoke, and I've seen him comfort them. I've been with him in Brooklyn when he, to speak, and he came back and got bad news about another family, losing another family. Like, his brother's strength, like, I just want to applaud him on what you do, like, publicly again. But that was but Brother Ron, I don't know if you've addressed it before, how do we get back to that kind of policing? And how do we get back to that? And what does policing in our community look like?
Yeah, I think the greatest example I could give is that in some smaller communities, there's a community here in Washington, D.C. Matter of fact, it's right up from Montgomery County where Sonia works. There's a brother up there that I know that serves on the NAACP. He's a lawyer. He's also works with the city council. And every time that they have had the selection process for a chief of police, he's reached out to me. And I've gone up there and sat down with the brothers and sisters up there and talk about the process. And more importantly, talk about the people that they need to be pulling for in their city. And I had the pleasure of serving on several selection committees here in Washington, D.C. when Marion Barrett was the mayor. Marion Barrett was the mayor, as well as when Miss Dixon was the mayor. And I learned a whole lot about that from those experiences. And one of the things that I tell the brothers in them here in this little city up in Maryland is that not only do we talk about the selection process, I have some names of some individuals who I've worked with and know, and who would be willing to go there and work in that city and be a Black police chief and do the kind of things that we need to be doing. Because if they go to some of them white organizations to help them facilitate the process, they're going to be bringing their own people. So we had to bring our own people. We know people who work like us, that have the same results of us. I mean, I tell you what, I would recommend Sonia. I would recommend the sister that's on the phone with her, because I know her and I've had experiences with her, and I think I know what kind of chief of police she's going to be. Just listening to what she's been talking about on the phone says to me
I second that emotion.
Chief of police that will, see, that's what I'm talking about. So why would I recommend somebody else when we got someone in our midst who can be the chief of police, and the results would be the kind of results that we would want for our community? Then she's going to be the person that I'm going to say to the brothers and sisters up, she needs to be the chief of police. This is who you need to bring up there. That's what we need to do. And those kind of people, we walk among them people all the time. Yeah, and we got to promote those kind of people. I remember in 1983, 1984, I said to Hubert Williams, who was at the Police Foundation, who had been the police commissioner in Newark, New Jersey, I said, Hubert, how do we break into the cycle of the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the Perth Police Executive Research Firm? Because they was getting all of the contracts to select all the chiefs of police. How are we going to break into that? So he gave me some pointers, and we started pulling for people like Marty Tapscott that went to Flint. We started pulling for brothers like Richard Pennington that went to New Orleans. When Lee Brown went to Atlanta, when Lee Brown went to New York. Those were brothers that we had confidence in, and sisters that we had confidence in, that was going to get the job done, but do it the way we wanted it done, and wasn't about abusing Black people. So it can get done, but we need to be driving the car and not riding the passenger. We need to be, what the brother said from Las Vegas is very true. We're there by ourselves. We're going to be by ourselves. Let's go ahead and drive the car, do what we're going to do. Now, we just can't put Sonia, I'm sorry. We just can't put Sonia in that little town and leave her alone. Then we got to go there and support her and be there with her and work with her and make sure that she has everything she needs for a good chief of police. See, too many times we facilitate people getting there, and then we alone and leave them all there alone by themselves. But we need to be there. We need to be on the phone. We need to be talking. And the people in the community need to go there, introduce her to the people, talk to them, and vouch for her doing the kind of job that we know she can do, and then support her doing the job. That's how we get it done. Because, see, that's how they do it. This ain't nothing new. That's just how they do it. So let's not be afraid, not be tentative. Let's get it done. Yeah, that's all. And I'm going to be recommending her like I recommend some of the people in her department. I don't recommend it for jobs that have left her department, and some of the people that I've worked with for years. Yeah. And I'm going to keep on doing it because, see, I know those folk, and I know their hearts too. And I'm not saying I know everything about them, but I know their hearts. And if we're going to have a chance to get to have the kind of policing in our community that we deserve and we want, then we need to have our people there, and the people who know. Not some other, now, just because you're Black don't mean that you're Black, man. I'm a strong believer in that.
Right.
But I know a good chief of police. I know Sonia would be a good chief of police. And I vouch for that. So that's how we do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. AJ?
I know
Real
we
quick, I
talked
just
about
want to just
the
indicate
youth again.
I just
Can you hear
want
me?
to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Alan.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan. No,
I was just
saying,
all I was going to
also,
indicate. I didn't know if
talking about.
All right, I think we on a pause.
Okay, I think we're trying to talk at the same time. I don't know what's going. Yeah. All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So talking about the youth again, how do you attract the youth to want to be in law enforcement? I know I hear Damon often say, you know, he's a correction officer, his wife is a detective, and neither one of their kids want any part of law enforcement. We don't see law enforcement speak up. I mean, other than people like Damon, we don't see brothers like you, Ron, in today's police. We don't see sisters like you, Sister Sonia, often. So this is what they see. So why would they want to be a part of that? How do we, and when you talk about changing a culture, sometimes it's too late to change the adults, to change the older people. Sometimes you got to start with those that's just going to get into it. We need to get our people into that. How do we accomplish that? What does that look like to y'all?
You
Well,
know what? Okay, let me from my perspective. You know, I have a lot of young people come to me and ask me about being law enforcement. I had someone come to me and he said to me, hey, listen, you know, I'm thinking about taking a test to become a police officer. What do you think? Do you think I should do it? And I don't know, maybe he thought I was going to tell him no. But I told him yes. I said, you should. I said, but this is what you need to remember when you go into that profession. See, because a lot of them didn't know, like Damon knows, AJ knows, a lot of people don't know that I worked in a juvenile correctional setting for over 10 years. I did revocation warrants and stuff like that. So I understand that process from that side as well. And I can remember my training officer said something to me that stuck with me, that when I became a training officer, I said the same exact thing to people who I train. Be firm, be fair, be consistent. If you do those three things, you will be fine. The minute you deviate from that is when you're going to have a problem. I said, so now we're in a correctional setting. So the softest guy that's on that unit, the same way you confront him, you better confront the toughest guy on that house the same exact way. Because if you do not, you are going to have a problem. You just can't do it. So anytime I have young people ask me about law enforcement, I encourage them. And I tell them, yes, do it by all means. But I always give them that little piece of information about being firm, fair, and consistent.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that we need to, we've been doing this for years. We need to get on the road. I don't have an issue with, I've been up there on the train many times. I go up into Montgomery County. I go up into, I can't think of the city where this brother lives, man. Here in Maryland that I have a relationship with. We've been all over the place doing this kind of work for the simple reason is that you don't always readily see the kind of role models that you want to generate. So we are role models. I'm just as much a role model there as I am here, and I don't mind coming. So that sometimes they need to see someone other than somebody local. But then, like Brother Chamberlain is talking about, you do have young people who ask the question, and we need to answer the question. If they say, if they're interested in law enforcement careers, then talk to them about it. Let them do some research. Let them do some reading around it and talk about the consistency and the integrity that's associated with it. Yeah, and then let them go do it. And look, the salaries that they're paying people to take those jobs is just fantastic. And so there's some incentive for doing it. But what we want is, we want people that have integrity. We want people that's going to be consistent, and we want people to know where they came from. if you're gonna be a police officer, be a police officer. Don't forget that you came from 8th and H, that you came from Allison Street. Come on now, let's be real. And because that's where you're gonna end up going back to now. And you can't go back to that community if you haven't done the right thing. Now, let's be real. Let's talk. You got to tell them those kind of things.
After they come back home.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Go look, Jonathan know because he was up at school. My student, when I was at UDC, oh man, I always wanted to encourage my student to be police officers. But more importantly, I wanted them to be educated about the institution, the criminal justice system, the institution of policing. I wanted them to know. And I would bring police officers and people like that into my classroom who were example setters about how to be police officers. There's a guy who was, he was one of the first Black police chiefs up in Montgomery County where Sonia worked, Clarence Edwards. Man, I would bring Clarence to my class all the time and have him talk to him. This is a upright, standing, articulate, sharp brother who don't take shit. He don't take no, he don't back up. It's always straight ahead. I'm telling you. So those are the kind of people. We know those people, so we need to put them to work. We need to use those folks in a constructive way. We need to use them and talk about the kind of things that are going on. So, you know, we need to be working cross organizations. We need to do that. I've always talked to Damon about bringing in other people, organizations, and working with them. I remember when we first started working with the minister, we worked with the minister. He would come to our conference. He would speak. We would talk about kind of issues, and then whenever he needed us, we would go work with him. Because those are the kind of things that you have to do. Because people will know you by your work. You don't have to try to sell yourself.
Right.
Exactly.
You don't have to try to sell yourself. All you have to do, if people call your name, they already know what it is that you stand for.
Let me add to also about the question you asked, AJ, about how you get the youth to want to get into law enforcement. One of the greatest incentives that you can say to them that they like is that you get a legal gun and a badge. I think that's great. You know, and wait a minute, and then you can arrest some white folks.
Well, that's gonna get some anyway. You know that.
Hey, Ron, I like your point about telling them what policing is like, because for me, what's missing, and I think that kind of some things that Jonathan said makes me think of this, is that when we talk to the young people, we got to tell them the truth. We have to tell them what they're going to be facing. It's
That's
just
right.
like if you are, you're not feeling well, you go to the doctor and you are diabetic, but they don't tell you because, you know, they like, we're going to try to protect you from what's real. And then you end up dying from diabetes. You got to tell people who are entering this profession exactly what
That's
you're
right.
facing, whether it turns them off or not. We can't be concerned about that, because there's going to be a segment of the population who's going to be like, oh, really? I'm down for that. Now, the power of the system and the structure and the institutional, all of that, that's going to be huge. And, you know, maybe some people can't fight against that, but we got to take our chances. And so from the outset, we need to tell them this is what you're going to. When I talk to young ladies about law enforcement, I tell them my stories of what I face, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't mince words. I tell them all the details, how I felt, what happened. And some of them are like, woo, wow. And then some of them are like, oh, okay, well, that's what we face in life anyway. So we just have to be very truthful with our kids, and you know, they let them make a decision about whether they want to go into law enforcement.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you, Sonia. That's the reason why I'm not a I'm not a firefighter today, because I'm a retired police officer. But that was the reason I didn't go to the fire department. Because when they told me, and I got a friend that I was in the Air Force with, who went to Vietnam. He was in Vietnam with me. He joined the fire department when we came back home. When he told me what he had to do to be a firefighter, he had to carry that 50-pound dummy, and he had to go run up and down that tower, and he had to go this distance and go inside that tower with that smoke. I said, no, that's not something that I want to do. Now look, listen to this, because I say when I see fire, I run away from it. But now he used to say, Dennis, he would say the same thing about me when I say I want to be, once I got on the police department, he said that's the same reason I didn't join the police department. I'm doing that. But it just goes.
You run into the gunshots, not run away from them. He can't understand that either.
No, he can't. He can't understand that. But see, like someone was talking about earlier, I knew. No, you said this. I knew that I had a gun, and I knew that my gun had 6 bullets in it. And then when I got a Glock, it had 17 bullets in it. And I was holding up and talking to crackers with my hand on my gun, just like they were doing it to brothers. Man, I'm telling you. So no, and I was don't get me wrong, because I understand exactly what this is about. I'm telling you. So I used to say to them, and told Damon the story. What would I look like? I'm a police officer, and I'm armed, have a badge and all that kind of stuff, and I'm going to allow a white police officer threaten and intimidate me. No,
exactly.
I'm not like that. No, sir, I don't do that. So no, you need to get yourself together right now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, I didn't play that. No, sir.
Let me
I got one more question.
Let me finish on that. On that, because when we talking about getting more Black and brown people to become law enforcement, right? Once they get in, and I think this is real important. Once they get in, we have to continue to mentor them, because once they get out of that academy, they are brainwashed with what comes through the academy. That academy, right, brainwashes you. That academy makes you think that we're all blue, and that's bullshit, right? That's bullshit. And I watch them, man. I watch them come through, and they're upright and they're standing at attention and and briefing and they're and they want a job, because sometimes when you get in this job and you in the early, I started when I was 21 years old, right? I ain't never seen that much money, a legal job. Went to work and I got paid, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, right? So, and that was back in 1990. So now you got police departments making over $100,000.
That's right.
I want to go back.
just to show up to work. So these young people that come in their early 20s ain't never seen that money before, and they want to keep their jobs. But the problem is, right, the Black officers that have experienced the bullshit, that have experienced the racism, some of us are just tired and aggravated and mean and evil, and we don't want to talk to nobody, right? Mm-hmm. Some of us is on our way out. We don't care, right? And then the other ones, we have risen up to some ranks, to some little prominence in our department, right? We don't want to show that we're Black anymore, right? Yeah. We're scared to show that we are a Black male and a Black female. So then what happens is that those new generations, and depending on the police department, you have a police department like New York City, they're pushing out 1,000 officers, right? So those young Black and brown officers, they have no real mentors. So what happens to them? They end up going with the majority and taking on the norms and values of the majority. And what did the majority say? And Ron, Sonia, y'all know this. Y'all don't want to join that Black Police Association.
That's exactly right.
They're racist.
They rebel rousers.
Right.
Rebel rousers.
They're racist.
For your career.
Right. They don't like Black folks, white people. They don't like white people. Don't join that. right?
Yeah.
And I try to tell young officers, I said, look, I didn't get to be able to write 2 reports, right, with the United Nations to go to the Geneva Convention from what the hell Westchester County Corrections taught me. They ain't teach me a goddamn thing but policy and procedure and training. I got to that point what I learned from being part of a Black police organization, right? That's where I got my real schooling from every year going to a conference. See, and these young Black officers don't think they need that training from a Black police organization. They think all they need is to be around certain people, to get put in certain posts so they could get promoted. But that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. So we have to, as Black law enforcement officers, no matter what department we're in, we have to reach back and we have to be examples. Not just talking about the job, not just showing them how to do a report, right? Not just, we need to talk about what we go through as Black law enforcement officers, because if we don't, we're just giving them over to this institution that we know don't give a damn about them because they're a body, just to fill a slot, and don't give a damn about our community. So I think somewhere we have to change the paradigm and get these young officers back into the fold of Black organizations. I see Black officers join the Emerald Society. Like, well, what the hell are you doing as a Black man joining the Emerald Society? Because you can't even vote unless you're from Irish descent. So what the hell are you going? Putting on bonnet, putting on the debris. I mean, if that's what you want to do, fine. But where is your culture? Where is your Black culture? Why you don't want to identify with your Black self? Yeah. Why are you scared to do that? They know how I roll at my job. I've been there 30 years. They know how I roll, but I show respect to no matter what other your color. As many times we sit with the white officers and we have discussions about race and politics, but from a respectful level, right? And not the fact that either one is superior or inferior. Right. But when you get caught into that police culture, that law enforcement culture, as a Black and brown person, you're already put in that inferior position because the culture demands that. The culture demands that, and you don't even know that you're doing it. Mm-hmm. So we have as conscious Black men, man, we have to reach back. We have to reach back.
Brother Damon?
Yes, sir.
The add to what you're saying, law enforcement is not attractive today because how it's being perceived. And nobody wanted to be joining a department where people spitting and sticking their finger up at you and calling you Uncle Tom and da. We have to give a new face. The recruitment of law enforcement today has to do what I was doing around the country before this quarantine is. The barbershops is where the young people at. They're not in the church. They're not going to town hall meetings. If you want to talk to the youth, meet them where they are. It's the barbershops. And to put a cadre of nice Black men who happen to be in law enforcement, but you ain't coming suited and booted. You coming looking like them, but you're able to sit down. And this kind of discussion we talking about need to be done in a circle where these young people get a chance to talk back. You feel me? And once if God permitted to this quarantine and we can get back to those kind of barbershop talks, that would be the greatest tour right there. And even with our sister Captain, we talking about the beauty salons with the women. Listen, we have the greatest opportunity because the Honorable Minister Farrakhan said this to me and I got to say it again. He said, brother, I would love to see those retired or those in law enforcement come into the hood and train the brothers how to police their community. So that way we don't look like we becoming vigilantes. but we are definitely becoming vigilant. And so I always remember the minister said that, but I see that's happening right now. And let me tell you this, the Million Man March, over 1.2 million men, we didn't have no police. We policed that 1.2 million men. And there was not one incident, not one fight, not one arrest. We policed 1.2 million men. There was no police officer out there. So we can police ourselves. We can make our community. And let me tell you, you remember this, Ron, we talking about the 25th anniversary coming up. Check this out. When we came back from the Million Man March, crime dropped in every major city in America. Police chiefs try to take credit for it. Mayors try to take credit for it. No, we took a pledge. And that pledge was we was going to go back to our communities and make our communities a safe and decent place to live. We took that pledge, and Black men did that. So we know we got the capability to clean up our community. We just got to get back to the first work. And I love the fact that we got this. And I'm going to tell you, I like the fact that you want to put Sister Captain as a chief. You got my vote on that, man. You got my vote on that.
One other question I had was about talking about the jogger who just got killed, the guy that was killed running, was jogging. If with this COVID situation, we don't really know what the new normal is, and we have to be we have to have like a mask or a covering. This was just a regular brother jogging. Just picture we all masked up. That would be more reasons for them to just kill us. And I mean, you know, just a masked brother just running through the neighborhood. You know, I just, you know, speak on that a little bit. Like that could be our new reality, our new normal, for real.
But there was a couple of brothers on television the other day who had been in a Costco's or Walmart, and some police officer was following them around telling them that it was against the law to wear. And so the brothers was wise. They didn't say nothing to the police officer. They left the store, and then they took off their masks. And then they made a complaint. They made a complaint to the police department that the white guy was from. And to the police department's credit, they owned up and said that there was no law saying that Black folk can't wear masks and all that. The officer was lying, so they suspended him, and so there's an investigation. To make a long story short, I don't think we ought to stop wearing it, but we, like everything else we do. Unfortunately, we have to talk to our children, men and women, about the stop. Continue to educate our families, talk about these issues. When I go to the store, I wear the mask because I want to be safe. I wear gloves. Now, if some ignorant police officer want to talk to me about not wearing the mask, then he's also going to bear the wrath that I'm going to put on him. He start talking to me about it, because I'm not going to have that. And I think everybody else, but mine isn't going to come out of anger. Mine's going to come out of the fact that I'm educated and know what the hell I'm talking about. And that's what we have to do. It goes along the same lines that Captain Dennis is talking about. It's about educating our community, giving them options and things to work with so that they can be better armed to deal with the issues that they're going to be confronted with. And then ultimately, in the end, we control and police our communities. We talk with our people because our people look up to us. Those brothers and sisters that I was talking about earlier, called the credible messengers, they're able to do the work in those communities in this city and other cities, in New York, as a matter of fact, in some of the boroughs in New York, because they have the credibility, they know the people, they've been dealing with the issues, and they know that they have the relationships and they respect people. Because you can't get something from people if you don't respect them, then they'll respect you. So no, I think that's the way to go. If that's going to be something we're going to participate in, then I'm willing to give that a shot. We have done some work like that before back in the day. I remember when the National Black Police Association was approached by some of the fraternities and sororities and asked to go down to Virginia Beach and be the middle ground between the police down there and the Black students, because the police was getting a little heavy-handed, and then plus some hotel down there had given the Black people in the hotel a band to wear on their arm but they didn't give white people bands to wear on their arm when they was down there, as if somehow or another you needed, because they was using, we used to have a band to get in, but they wasn't doing that for white folk. So the organization itself has a history of doing that, and we want to do that ourselves. So we really can't separate ourselves from our community, and it just behooves us to be able to work with do the kind of things that have all to do with controlling these issues in our community. We should not let people come into our community. Someone earlier mentioned about the Jewish community and some of the other communities, that they're absolutely right. The police can't go in and do those kind of things. And we shouldn't be permitting, and I use the word permitting, the police to come in and do those kind of things in our community. We need to be doing them for ourselves.
So you want to? Would you like to chime in on that?
Cap? Sister Cap?
I was nodding my head because I'm like, well, everything he said. Wow, that's like a mouthful. And so I'm the director of community engagement for Montgomery County Police for the next 2 months, because then I'm out. When I first got there, we had to go in front of the county council and talk about all these things that we're doing in the community, because a statement was made that our police department really does not do community policing. And so as we were having our executive meeting and compiling all of this data, my question became, has anyone asked them what they mean by that? I never really got an answer. But I thought to myself, it's not the quantitative. I mean, we could do Coffee with a Cop all day long.
Right.
But the people who are coming to Coffee with a Cop are not the people that we need to be talking to.
That's right.
Thank you. That's
So,
exactly right.
My approach from that point on for my division was, okay, we're going to go out here and we're going to do some stuff to make it quality time. Not quantity, because, you know, we got the districts, all of them are doing all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with Coffee with a Cop. I like Coffee with a Cop and cake with a cop and cupcakes with a cop and ice cream with a cop. I like all that stuff, right? But I want to talk to the people. I don't care what people we talking to, as long as the people in those communities who need our attention. So that was how I looked at it. And that's how I'm looking at what we're talking about now. That you're right. We need to take this whole, what we're talking about today, which is outstanding, and take all of this to the community. I was at the Million Man March. I still have my video that I made at the Million Man March. I was interviewing young men at the Million Man March because I wanted to know what this movement was.
Come on.
Amongst my brothers. And I get it. And you're right, it was effective. Didn't nobody get beat down, or wasn't nobody getting arrested. And we took that back to our communities and we made it work. And so we need to do the same thing with this law enforcement piece. We need to take it into our communities by those of us who know what we're talking about, because we've been on the inside. Jonathan, I don't know what you did to get released, but I'm sure it was, I know he probably had both his fists up in the air. And we need to take that collective knowledge to our community and use it to empower.
I'll tell you how to get released.
No, he wouldn't take that Malcolm X picture down in his office.
All you got to do is tell on some of them bad cops, and your ass will get released too.
That's right. That's right.
Trying to get out before that happens.
Yes.
The knowledge is empowering, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about empowering our communities, and so I'm just really excited about that. What did you have a specific question for me, AJ?
Well, no, you answered a couple of questions I had, but I was talking about Black people with masks, and you know, this individual jogging and getting shot without him.
Yeah.
There's a fear of Black people without masks. So you got Black people masked up.
So one of my peers, I heard him ask, "What are we gonna do about these people wearing the masks?" So the person that they asked the question to answered it, but it wouldn't have been the answer that I would have given him. Because my answer would have been, well, we're going to treat them like a person wearing a mask who's going about their business until they commit a criminal act.
That's right.
I mean, are we supposed to be treating people wearing a mask different? That was an underlying question there that was not addressed, but I was not the person that he was talking to. I was listening.
Wow.
That's
right. So sometimes I got to learn how to listen because I tend to just jump in. I was listening. This whole thing with the masks in the United States is just another tool of abuse as far as I'm concerned. Now you're going to reasonably suspicion yourself into stopping somebody because they either have on a mask or don't have on a mask. It's just some more mess. Okay?
But see, but it's also some ignorance because of the simple reason you live we live in a society at a time where they're talking about and this has been going on for some time. You have there are governments that want you to wear masks because of the health thing. So why would you even ask a question like that when you know what the rationale is, first of all, about why we wearing the mask? So does that mean that black folks shouldn't wear it because they're not susceptible to the coronavirus, which is bullshit? Yes, they are. We know statistically they're more at risk than white folk. So they need to have on 2 masks. So when you start talking that shit, sometimes you just need to tell them exactly what it is that they need to hear. And then that just sets the whole thing up. But those are stupid questions. But, you know, you did right. Sonia, let me say this. I don't know why you're leaving, but I'm going to tell you something. When I heard it knocked me off my feet, because I think you need to be around a little bit more. Now, that's my selfish heart. That's my selfish heart saying that.
Talk offline.
That's right. Let's talk.
Look, I don't want to end up like Brother Jonathan down here. I'm just eat on, you know.
Hey,
look, I know, because look,
it's advantageous to leave and get fired and sue and get the money.
Look, when it's time to go,
get the money, get the super out of it. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it's time to go. It's time to go. I understand that because it came on me like that. It was time to go. It's time to go. So, but I tell you though, I'm gonna be pulling for you, sister. And if I hear about some openings, I'm gonna be putting your name down.
Hey, Fairmont Heights needs a police chief.
And get ready for that Godfather saying, right when you think you out,
Fairmont Heights be a good
pull you back in.
Hey, wouldn't Fairmont Heights be good for?
Fairmont Heights would be good. Now,
they down. I got the other officer fired. The police chief is gone. They down to about 1 damn officer over there. Pretty soon it's gonna be a volunteer organization. But they're still hiring.
Tell them, Ron, y'all never quit. Y'all get out the game and wind up getting into security. Y'all don't never quit. Y'all got to get back in the game. It's in your blood.
Look,
you really know that Fairmont Heights, though.
Look, Jonathan, I knew the brother who was in Capitol Heights. I knew the brother that was in District Heights, and both of them had come from the Metropolitan Police Department, worked with me. Mm-hmm. They're pretty good guys. They've come up and done some things. Even out in, what's the one out there off of MLK Boulevard?
Mount Rainier?
It may be Mount Rainier. Maybe Mount Rainier. Yeah. Well, there was, oh, shoot, I can't. There was a woman who was in the one out there off of 210. I mean, not 210, Kenilworth Highway. She was, matter of fact, she was an acting chief at one time. Sonia Proctor was acting chief in my department at one time, and she cut the job. I think it was in Bladenburg or somewhere like that. But that the brother was talking about how you start. A lot of times, them small police departments can be stepping stones to some of them great jobs.
Yeah,
you get a chance to initiate projects and programs.
Use them as a petri dish. That's right.
That's exactly right, and that's what I'm saying. You know, but I
won't even sue him if you go over there. I mean, I'll finish this one case I got in process. I'll leave him alone for a few months. You know.
So
they got plenty of meat on that bone over there, boy.
We actually coming up on almost 3 hours.
Get out of here.
Yeah. I like to leave things on a positive note. We talked about a lot of things that are wrong. A lot of the things that are wrong with the relationship with the police and the community, a lot of things that's wrong with the policing of the Black community. What going out, what positive words can you leave people? How can we work on this? You know, I like to leave something positive, you know, towards the end, instead of, you know, just always talking about what's wrong.
Well, I'm gonna say, man, for me, this has been positive because I think you had to bring up.
Right, no, exactly.
And had the discussion. But Sir Robert Peel, who they say is the father of policing in terms of the world, because he wasn't here in the States, he was in the UK. And he was the first police commissioner in the UK. And he didn't start off being a police commissioner. He was in Parliament and then got the job. But he had these 12 principles, and even today, those 12 principles make sense. If you look them up, they're called Peel's principles, Robert Peel's principles of law enforcement. Even today, they make good sense. But the one that has always made sense to me is that I think it was two of them, but one of them is that the people are the police and the police are the people and the people are the police. It goes to what Captain Dennis has been talking about in terms of us doing the work. The other thing that I paid attention to that is in the principles, and that is that the power that police have is the power that the people give them.
Come on now.
That's right.
We give the police power to work in our community. And at such a time that they abuse the power, then we need to take the power back. So those kind of things. Now I'm telling you, I would encourage, you know, I know we got a whole lot of stuff to do. Every now and then I go look them up and read the principles, because in my mind, it sort of grounds me in terms of the work and how I see policing. And in the UK, one of the strangest things about the UK when they started their police force, and then even something that they still do today with their single police officers, and that is that every time they have a recruit police officers, they also have housing for them in the communities that they're gonna work in. And so if you're a single police officer, you can live in the barracks because every police department has their barracks. But sometimes in some of those urban settings, they provide housing for police families, the police officers and their families, because they want police officers to live in the communities that they work in, that they come and be a part of. And it just makes sense, that the principles just make sense in terms of what it is we do. So in a positive way, for us to go back to basics in terms of doing these things, mean that we're talking about the kind of things that Dennis and the rest of them are talking about in reference to our own communities and having the kind of control over them that makes sense. And I'm gonna tie this something that Jonathan had talked about earlier. When we talk ultimately about law enforcement and independence and self-sufficiency, we're talking about the other institutions in our society. We begin to wean ourselves off those institutions and the control of them in our community. I'm telling you, you will watch what happens when you do it. Because the police happen to be the most visible institution in our society, the one with the most power, and it didn't always be that way, but we need to take control of the other institutions in our society, like education, healthcare, housing, all of those things. And once we take control of them, take them back from who has them now, then we can begin to deal with the disproportionality that exists in our society as it relates to our people. Because we wouldn't let a family that have no home not have a home when there are vacant homes in our community. But see, the institutions control that, and they don't care nothing about whether or not people have homes or not. The institution controls education. They don't care whether or not our kids get educated or not. That disproportionality exists in our community. So that's just the first stop. So I would hope that we're talking about it in a universal kind of way, because that one road leads to all the rest of the roads as it relates to how the institutions control what happens in our community and who gets what.
You know what, Ron, that's what Professor Bell was talking about, real community policing. See,
that's right.
This this BS that you see that they call community policing right now, that's not community policing. What Ron just explained is what Professor Bell, who originated community policing, and then they stole it from him. That's what he was talking about. Because you not only have to address crime and violence, but you have to address those institutions that fail
exactly
Black and brown people, that create crime and violence. So if you're not talking about that, we think community policing is coffee with a cop or doing some dance challenge or basketball. Basketball. But that's not community policing. That's policing programs.
Right.
That it's a difference. You know, so when we're talking about real community policing, we're talking about those institutions and systems that affect the community to create crime and violence. I see that's why I think we always have it twisted, you know, and we have to train Black law enforcement officers, no matter what department, so when they get in these decision-making positions, that they're able to see it from an actual community perspective instead of an institutionalized culture of policing.
Right. Yeah.
So and that's our problem. That's our problem.
Brother Jonathan?
So positive stuff that I see, one, I see out in California, the law that was passed back in 2019, the Senate bill that came through that increased police accountability for officers when they step out of line. There's an attempt right now to put in what's called a uniform use of force bill, use of deadly force bill, that's being looked at in terms of having right now the standard, the way that it is called objective reasonableness, and an officer can shoot you based on what they feel is objective and reasonable, and that's from the perspective of an officer similarly situated. Well, what's reasonable to us is somewhat unreasonable, or excuse me, what's unreasonable for us as African Americans at times is reasonable for them to do. Right. They have fear and they have biases that are built up in them, and so what we want to see is a more uniform use of force. And also positive things. I will say this: over the last 4 or 5 years, since 2014, since starting the work that I've been involved with, I am happy to see the amount of prosecutions of police officers that are resulting in convictions. It has not been anywhere where we need it to be, because there are more officers that go away completely unscathed. But I think that we can say that since we started in 2014, there has been more officers prosecuted for their actions, and that number seems to be increasing. And I hope that that's something that pattern will continue. Right now, before the Supreme Court is, I want to say, either 8 or 13 cases that have to deal with qualified immunity. And this is an area that the public is now becoming aware of in terms of what qualified immunity is. This completely judicially created legal doctrine creates a sort of gray area for officers to operate in and fill that gray area with inappropriate misconduct. And so the Supreme Court is actually going to weigh in on this. Now, of course, we're worried right now because this is a Supreme Court that has been appointed by Donald Trump. And so for the majority of the people that are on there, this is our sort of moment to determine whether or not these folks are going to do the right thing, because we believe that qualified immunity is, like I said, it's a completely judicially created theory that they have broadened the scope of it, to where if an officer didn't know of if the law was not clearly established inside the jurisdiction that he's in, that he's somehow now covered from misconduct. And so there is a law that's written on books, and there is a law that's written in the hearts of men and women. And we know the difference between right and wrong. And so what is happening is that officers, because of this qualified immunity doctrine, they are able to do things that is not necessarily expressly forbidden by the law, but we absolutely know it's wrong, and they're covered by qualified immunity. So if they have this immunity, there's no civil penalties that they're going to be exposed to, and 9 times out of 10, there's not going to be any criminal penalties that they're exposed to. And so this is a big deal. I'm hoping that the Supreme Court does the right thing with it.
I hope so too.
Yeah, that's important to me. So those are the things that I feel that are good news. I always look at the glass as half full as opposed to half empty. We have made progress, you know. There are so many lives that have been affected by police misconduct and police brutality in our communities. And I think that we are making progress. As you know, Dr. King says, the moral arch of the universe bends long, it bends towards justice. And so I think that we'll be getting there sooner than we think.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, brother, because
I'm trying to be positive, David. Now,
tell you something, man. When we joined the National Black Police Association in 1992, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was 23 years old and 180 pounds, and I used to see Ron. I used to see Roger Abel. I used to see all them at the national conference, the Eastern Regional Conference, all the conferences, and I used to think, man, freedom is just around the corner, right? Man, these strong brothers and sisters, man. Listen, man, please, by the time I get 20 years, man, we gonna be free. And guess what? I'm still here 30 years and standing with Ron. Ron's still fighting, right? 30 years later, Ron's still fighting, and I'm standing with Ron, fighting the same goddamn fight that I thought lasted 30 years ago. We was just around the corner, man. We still fighting the fight, man. And brothers like Ron, man, I commend y'all because you retired and you still fighting. But the crazy thing about it is the ones behind us, they ain't got no fight. They want a check. They rather have a check than a fight, right? They don't have any fight, brother. So because when your check after a couple of overtimes is $6,500, $7,000, you ain't thinking about no goddamn fight with a $7,000 check. After a couple of overtimes, you got cops making $300,000 a year with overtime. They ain't thinking about no fight. They're not thinking about no fight because they figured it out. Let's give these Negroes money.
Right, and quiet them down.
Let's give them money. Let's give them. We don't care. We gotta. If the municipalities gotta pay any type of bonds and take a bond out and make the taxpayer pay. No, let's give these Negroes money and keep them quiet, and let's lift them up into another tax bracket and think that they better than where they came from, right? And that's what happens. Yeah, and we lose our goddamn mind over these checks. We lose our mind over these checks and over this overtime. So we don't give a damn about the community until one of those white cops or that police department start treating you like you a nigga, right? You get that nigga wake-up call. And then you come, and then you call my phone or you inbox me on Facebook that you need help.
Yeah, that's right.
And then after I help your black ass, you disappear. Don't even join the organization, right? Don't do anything. Just go about your business and start kissing ass again. That's what I deal with on all the time with these Negroes, and that's what it is. And that's what it is.
Hey, Damon, you know what I want to do when you're talking? I want to do this. You made me want to just turn over tables and fight.
And you see why they don't want him on Facebook? We understand. It's very clear why they don't want you. Why they banning you on Facebook?
Hey, listen, I got a lot of love. I got a lot of love for my brothers and sisters law enforcement. But guess what?
Man, we feel your passion.
I got a lot of love, man. But we got to. The crazy thing is, we have to do better.
Yeah, we do.
We got to do better. We have to do better because sooner or later we're not going to be on this job. We're not going to be able to use that I'm on the job to get out situations, and then they're going to bust us in the head the same way they bust Ray and Junebug in the head, and they ain't going to give a damn.
Right.
That's right. Yeah,
that's exactly how it goes.
That's right.
When I got, when I got fired down in Georgia, I blew the whistle on a sitting sheriff, so it was not a fun ride. And I was the first person to step out against that sheriff, and it was a black sheriff. Okay, my own black sheriff. He was a horrible individual. He's still there. He's the one who shot his girlfriend, and then still got reelected. Okay, but what I loved has happened over the last 5 years. All these people that, hey, he fired me for nothing. He fired me for this. Will you come back down here? Do you represent anybody down here? It's like, nobody sees the importance of organizing until it happens. It happens to them. It's what Damon's saying. And then after you do help, they don't see the importance of reaching back into the pot to help other people who are going to experience the same thing.
That's exactly right. Thank you. The thank yous are thin.
The thank yous are so thin, man.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you
can't
do it for the thank yous.
You're forced into doing. I mean, you're not forced into, but you just know it does start to wear on you to the point where you start being concerned about taking on either new cases or new issues with people.
That's right.
You say to yourself, man, I'm not going to put my neck out here on the line. Number one, I don't like fighting for no Negroes who won't fight for themselves.
Absolutely.
Period. They're not willing to really. If I ain't seen no fight in you, I'm not getting in the fight with you.
Yeah, that's the first. Yeah, that's the first. Absolutely. That's the first standard. Yeah, that's right.
If I don't see no fight in you, I'm not getting in the fight with you, because I'll be fighting, run out of breath, maybe pass out, and the other person will kill me, and you'll be done ran off someplace.
Brother Kenneth.
Oh Lord. Oh man, I tell you.
Okay, I'm supposed to leave this on a positive note.
If at all possible. I mean,
I'm supposed to leave this on a positive note. I'm still waiting on a decision from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals on what they're gonna do in the killing of my father. I'm supposed to leave this on a positive note. Brother Jonathan was just talking about qualified immunity, and it just gave me flashbacks. Because I know all too well what that qualified immunity means. That you generally get no relief in court and have no ability to hold an offending officer accountable, because a judge just throws it right out and won't allow you to hold these officers accountable.
Positive note, Kenneth. Let me tell you what a positive note is. At 76 and being able to get up in the morning and clothes on and hit the street and hit the ground walking, that's a positive note.
It most certainly is.
On that.
And I'm salute you right now for that. But I will say this much, in all honesty, in this fight, and Damon can definitely attest to this, because he is usually the person that I usually vent to with a lot of the stuff that I have going on. And there have been many times in this fight that I wanted to walk away.
Yeah.
That I was, excuse the expression, I was like, F it. Like, what's the point? But then each time I begin to feel like that, I get some type of confirmation not to do it.
Yeah.
And, I start having different people come into my life. I can remember how I was feeling, believe it or not, each time I got involved with each one of you on a different level. And it was like, okay, so this brother's fighting, so I'm not gonna stop. This sister's fighting, I'm not gonna stop. So, and I guess, like, how's that quote go, that there's no power for change greater than the community discovering what it cares about? So if I have to leave it on a positive note, my positive note is to all of you. As a family member,
Take your time, my brother.
Yes.
As a family member of a loved one who got killed, none of you knew my father except for Damon. So for you guys to be out there and want to fight just as hard with me, I appreciate it. I really do, because my youngest daughter was 9 years old when my father was killed. And I remember when she asked me, why did they kill my grandfather? I never had an answer for her. The only thing that I could do was put her around people who I knew was law enforcement.
Yeah.
I put her around Damon. I put her around his wife. I put her around another sister, Mount Vernon police officer. And Damon and I was talking about that the other day, how my daughter used to play with Montica's phone all the time, you know, and sitting there. And, you know, and I remember the day that I told my daughter that Montica was a police officer, her eyes got real big. Couldn't believe it. And she was only 9 years old. So, again, my positive note is for you guys. You know, Capt, you already know how I feel about you, so. But I definitely appreciate all of you. You know, PG County, you know, y'all gonna be seeing me because I'll be down there in Upper Marlboro quite a bit. So, you know, I'll be down that way. And when I do, I'll reach out to you guys. But again, thank you. You know, I appreciate all of you. That's my positive note. It's to you guys for standing by me and standing by other families like mine. I appreciate that.
Thank you, my brother. We appreciate you too. I tell you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brother Allen.
I just wanted to, I want to thank everybody. I've been, just as I think some of you on this line, I've been sitting here writing notes. So I'm gonna go look up the Peel's Principles of Law Enforcement. I want to go read that. Just a couple of things. Yesterday, when myself and Damon and some others were on the line, we were talking about what we were gonna be conversing about today. Yesterday, we were talking about reparations, and we were talking about, and which I just want to leave everyone with, is there's a lot of, at least online stir of reparations. And we broke it down to saying, you know, before reparations, the short part of that long word is the word repair. And this element that we have right now, the things that are happening within this pandemic, not only to what's happening with Brother Arbery in Georgia, but what happened with Sean Reed up in Indianapolis.
Yes.
That video is online, and you see the cop standing over his body saying, well, I guess we're gonna have a closed casket. And he's sitting there cracking up. So I'm just saying that, you know, this period that we're in right now, we should kind of dedicate ourselves to, as we would call it in the nation, putting on the new man, putting on the garments of the new man, so that we can emerge from this containment period ready to affect the change, being about the change that we talk about. I mean, I have a monster development here in Vegas that we are gonna, you know, talk about at the due time, and I'll be communicating about it much more. But just wanted to thank everybody for this. Damon, thank you. Captain Dennis, of course, and everyone else on this line. Peace and definitely.
Sister Sonia.
So the positive for me is that there is there's always hope. I know that sounds kind of corny, right? I told Ron I was gonna talk to him offline about why I'm leaving the police department, but I can tell you this small piece is that sometimes you can outgrow your surroundings.
Yeah.
And I'd like to continue this work, and I'd like to have the time to do it. And then, you know, Kenneth, you know, I'm mad at you because you made me cry. I'm just saying, I'm still feeling kind of teary and emotional. But I love my people. I love people, period. But I particularly love my people.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I feel like we're at a critical mass point. And so I involve myself in these conversations because I need the motivation and the push, because sometimes I feel I'm running on empty. So I like Kenneth want to thank all of you, because you have you poured into my soul today. And what you poured into my soul is that there's going to be somebody there that we can all lean on to continue to move this conversation and this effort forward. And that even in the midst of feeling alone, which of course we never are if you have a belief in God and the universe, the spirit, just knowing I can pick up the phone or hit my Facebook Messenger and say, hey, I need some help, or can you come and talk to these young people, or I need a speaker for a class that I'm teaching. It's a wonderful thing to expand that pool of people. And I want to tell you that I appreciate what you do standing for the community. And I especially appreciate Brother Damon Jones. Damon and I met, decades ago now, NBPA. Yeah. I always loved Damon for the way he just come right at you. I appreciate that in a person. So thanks for putting this conversation together, and thanks for just always being the voice of honesty.
Right.
Always. I appreciate all of you. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all better, those of you who I don't know already. Thank you.
Captain Dennis.
Man, you know, my life is enriched from this great conversation of the brilliant people that is on this call. I'm not saying that to stroke anyone, that is the God's truth. I have lived to see a time that have arrived. I know how you feel, Brother Damon, but I remember the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that if he thought that we was going to reform in the years that he became the messenger, it would take 45 years later to realize it ain't happening, and we now 90 years, I'm sure he may not have took on the work. But we are now at the critical moment. And I think right now, as we know, that crime and violence is really a direct result of unmet social needs. Like what Ron said, we have to address the social issues. But as we do that, as we're talking about building principles by which we can govern our community, those principles have to have an enforcement of law. You can't create principles, you can't create norms if you don't have an enforcement of those principles and norms. So I see this, and let me say this, Brother Damon, I thank you so much. You know, you have always been that brother that I admire of your strength of being that Black law enforcement brother, but you know, you're a Muslim. And Brother Jihad, you know how I feel about you. And Brother Allen, give a shout out to your brother and your mom for me. But let me say this. I think what we need to do, because one thing about it, Brother Ron, we don't have to call no more conferences where you got to get a ticket, get a hotel room. Look at this. Man, this Zoom thing is awesome. All we need to do is, listen, Damon, is that we're going to do a Zoom again, and we're going to bring some other players. We're going to go get some of them other chiefs out there that's retired, that's still got to fight it. But we're not going to make it public. We're not going to do it live. But this is a great opportunity for us to come together and put. You remember they had a book, How to Act When You Stop by the Police. It was a little pamphlet they had back in the day. Well, we're no longer going to come up with a pamphlet to teach our people how to react to law enforcement when they stop. No. We're going to come up with a booklet, How to Police Your Community.
Come on
And
now.
we need to
Yes.
come together.
Yes.
And we got a brother, Jonathan, your lawman. Listen, we got everything we need. There's some other great people out there that would be loved to come and say, listen, man, utilize me. We have to take the reins now. So with this Zoom, Brother Damon,
Yes.
let's design it so we can meet. And it's a conference, we ain't got to go nowhere, but this time, let it not be public, but let us talk about the business at hand or what we can do to train our community to police itself. We ain't gonna spend a whole lot of time talking about white folks. All we're gonna talk about what we're gonna do. And on that positive note, I'm excited about that. May
Yes,
God bless you, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Brother Damon.
Yes, sir, man. Listen, this is a positive note, you know, and I hope those that were able to watch it. I ended up having to put my phone to the screen and record it live. Yeah. So that's the, you know, so, but I think we also, I hope the people, you know, got something from this, and I hope they are energized to maybe ask the right questions from their political leadership, from their police management, from their pastors, the churches, because, you know, I mean, this is something that moving forward we have to do as a community, and we need Black law enforcement professionals to come up with, and that's great, Captain Dennis. I have no problem with hosting it and offline, and we could come up with an agenda, come up with a mission statement, come up with what's needed. Remember I talked about, hey Ron, remember I talked about this with the NBPA that we should have did the state of Black America with policing, a once a year report, and a lot of them Negroes were scared on the board to do that, so we could have a record of, and Professor Bell was willing to do the research, you know, so we could have a record of what our relationship is with law enforcement. But moving forward, yes, we need to start policing our community. And I want to say this for the record, Captain D. When you brought the Peacekeepers to Mount Vernon has never had a year with no shootings or homicides. That's the only time when you had the Peacekeepers in that Mount Vernon for that year that they did not see a homicide.
That's right.
But also what was important, that it was a relationship with Commissioner Bell.
Yes.
It was a relationship with the community and the police department, that we worked together, and the police were the backup to the community policing itself.
Come on, that's right.
And what happened? Crime and violence went down. Crime and violence went down. And it's never been that way again. So I think Black law enforcement management or police management should go back and look at that example. And let's see how we could do that again.
Yes.
Because if we went a year, and it was men and women taking control of their community through the Peacekeepers, and which kept the community safe for our children. And there wasn't no homicides.
Right.
And I don't think Mount Vernon has seen that since, that they went a whole year without a homicide. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, it's there. We know what to do. You know, we just need to get off our behinds and do it as a people. You know, and that's it, man. You know, this was a great conversation, man, and I want to thank everybody. I definitely want to thank everybody. This was beautiful, man. This is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Keep wearing that mask.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all our guests. Unfortunately, we weren't able to be live, and they kicked us off. but we will post the video on blackwestchester.com so you can see it in its entirety. Again, to all of our guests, like I said, I prepared a bunch of questions, and y'all have answered the questions sometimes before I can ask them. I just had to throw the paper away. Like, it made no sense. Like, and then Sonia would bring up something I'm just about to say, and Sonia would say it already. And I'm like, oh, man. You know, so, but no, I appreciate that. Damon, thank you for putting this together. This is what Black Westchester is about. This is like an all-star panel. Much respect to all of you individually and collectively. Like Kenneth said, we just got to continue to do the work. You actually all inspire me to do what it is that we do. You know what I'm saying? With Black Westchester, you all have played some portion or some part of the paper, the radio show, the magazine. So, and it inspired me. And Brother Ronald, I've learned a lot from you through Damon because you taught him well. So he quotes you a lot. So I felt like I knew you, even though I never met you in person. Right. Like, you know, I felt like I knew you. You know what I mean? Because he is always quoting you. Always quoting you.
I'm honored too, man.
And Captain Dennis, man, I'll never forget when you asked us to come down to South Jamaica, Queens, man, the 40 projects and the show of all the Black men, like what you were saying, and women were driving by saying they had never seen nothing like this, and we're like, thank you, brothers, for being out here, and you know what I'm saying, and they were wanting to see more of that. That's what our community need to look like. So, you know. Yeah. Thank you for the Peacekeepers, my brother. Thank you for what you do. Thank everybody for what they do collectively and individually. And this has been Black Westchester Presents Policing in the Black Community. How do we stop police brutality in the Black community? I hope we answered some questions. I hope, you know, we gave enough